Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Logan Bailey.
Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast, Football Edition, Week 9, brought to you by our primary sponsor, 3Court. I'm your host, Logan Bailey, and joined again today by Keith Brown, AJ Fairchild, and Tony Fairchild. So thanks again, guys, for joining, and another week in the books, another week coming up.
Yep.
Sure is.
Football weather was in full effect last Friday night.
Yes, it was.
Wasn't as nice as we've been having. We've been talking about how nice it's been, but last Friday, kind of Mother Nature kind of said, "Hey, here you go."
That cold, wet rain, just ugh. Yeah, that's football weather for you.
I believe that's even. I was talking to you guys earlier. The first time probably Tinora's played a football game in nearly 2 years that we've had either rain or cold or something during the regular season. So, we've been very fortunate the last couple of years to have really good weather. So, a little bit different on last Friday.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, Keith, we always joke about it, was out there. It seemed like every week it rained there that 1 year. So he was always holding a tarp or wearing rain suits. And then Keith jokes around about having to hold up a tarp and his Cleveland Brown gloves still drying out from it.
Still drying out decades later.
I think all of last year, I don't think even in playoffs, I don't think it got real cold because, what was it, Elmwood they played? That's when they lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was windy, but it wasn't super cold.
Yeah.
So even into week 2 of playoffs, it wasn't cold. But this year's a little different story.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this Friday night. It's supposed to be raining again.
Yeah, as I say, here on out, I think you're going to see more true fall weather rather than 80 degrees like we saw a couple weeks ago. So let's go ahead. Let's look at how we did for last week's picks. Logan and Matthew finished first for the week with a 15-3 record. Everyone else tied at 14-4. For the year, Matthew continues to lead at 117-30 clip. I am second with 114-33 record. Third is Keith with 113-34 record. Fourth is Tony with 111-36 record. And tied for fifth and last is AJ and Bryce with 107-40 records. So
I'm not last.
Pulling up the caboose.
Hey, you can pull a Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last.
You ain't first, you're last, I guess.
That's right.
I guess I'm last.
I don't know, but it's still a close race between everyone. And, if you look at it, I believe percentage-wise, everyone's almost guessing like at 78% or more. Yeah. So that's pretty impressive for the entire year. Overall, we'll see who ends up coming up the winner. So.
Well, Antwerp and Holgate, Stryker killed everybody.
Yeah, they did. Basically those three. Other than that, I know you guys, we were pretty split on Hicksville and Edgerton, and that kind of knocked some people out too. So a lot of good games last week, and we're going to go ahead and get into them here. So looking at Week 8 game recaps, and we're going to look at NWO Sports Game of the Week here first, and we're looking at Crestview at Columbus Grove, and Columbus Grove won this big matchup 37-0. This sets up a tie for first place in the Northwest Conference, with Columbus Grove and Bluffton both sitting at 5-0 in the conference. Looking at some comparisons, Bluffton played Crestview and won 21-0 compared to Columbus Grove winning 37-0. And actually, Crestview played Bluffton last week, so very good comparison to kind of see where things are sitting. So next kind of point was the league title is going to be up to basically the Week 10 matchup when Columbus Grove and Bluffton match up. So that will be a huge game, and be sure to tune into that one. So we were talking earlier, and that's going to be an exciting matchup. Yep. Looking at this game, Columbus Grove jumped out in this game 21-0 with a first quarter lead. Total yards, Columbus Grove had 417 yards, 213 passing. Crestview had 178 yards, 114 rushing. Looking at the turnover battle, Columbus Grove had 0. Crestview had 1 interception. Looking at some top players of note from Columbus Grove, quarterback Landon Best had an excellent performance this game, 11-14, 79% completion percentage, 213 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He had 0 interceptions, and he also had 8 carries for 35 rushing yards. Running back Trent Barraza continues to be a tank and workhorse for that offense. 18 carries, 120 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver Kyle Hopkins, 5 receptions, 104 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And wide receiver Zach Reynolds, 2 receptions, 56 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Guys, thoughts on the Columbus Grove and Crestview game?
Just a great game by Columbus Grove to shut those guys out. It's just Trenton Barraza just still carrying the rock for him. And one of the things you got wrote down here, Logan, is that they have more passing yards this week than they do rushing yards, which is really weird for Columbus Grove.
It looks kind of like they came out and really dominated. 417 yards to Crestview's 170. I would like to see how many plays that was over. Where was the play split and what was the time of possession? But 417 yards. Good job, Columbus Grove.
Yeah, Columbus Grove actually playing some of the better ball in the area. Quietly look up, they're 7-2. I think they started 1-2 and beat a very quality Crestview team. So Coach Schaefer has Columbus Grove playing good ball at the right time.
Yeah, and Columbus Grove, I believe they dropped, I don't even know what win streak they're on. They're probably on a 5-6 game win streak by now, but they dropped the home opener to Pandora Goboa and dropped a tough one against a very good PH team. But Columbus Grove, they always find a rhythm towards the end of the season, and that's when you want to be playing your best ball, is at the end of the year leading into playoffs. And that's why we see every year Columbus Grove is making playoff runs and regional title berths and state semifinal berths. It seems like almost every year. So Coach Schaefer does a very nice job with those Bulldogs.
Yeah, they won 5 straight Logan and 3 shutouts. 3 of 5 have been shutouts.
Yeah, so that's exactly what you want to be doing for your ball club. So excellent job by them, and they've got a big one coming up and next week too. So, all right, let's look at the next game here, and this was a huge matchup that really shook up the Green Meadows Conference, and this was Ayersville at Antwerp. And Ayersville ended up winning this game 30-24, and we actually caught the last little bit of it watching it on our phones. So this was one that you did not want to miss. 2 back-to-back games of thrilling football for the Pilots, and this week they ended up on the winning side. This actually snapped Antwerp's 23-game regular season winning streak, and the last loss before this one for Antwerp in the regular season actually came to Tinora back on September 10th, 2021. So what a run for the Archers. In this win for Ayersville, it makes a 3-way tie for the Green Meadows Conference between Antwerp, Ayersville, and Tinora. So things are going to get interesting here to end the season. Ayersville was up this game 14-8 at halftime, and Ayersville just pounded the rock on the ground, rushing for 323 yards compared to just Antwerp's 246 yards of total offense. Looking at the turnover battle, Ayersville had 2, 1 fumble, 1 interception. Antwerp had 2, 1 fumble, 1 interception. Looking at some key points from this game, late in the fourth quarter, Ayersville was actually up 26-16. They had a 4th down and 6 on the 49-yard line. The Pilots ended up running a fake punt around the right end with running back Torrin Knieven that hit for 41 yards and brought the football down to the Antwerp 10-yard line. And I've heard there was some confusion on this, and actually some of the Ayersville players, they didn't know it was a fake. But all that matters was Knieven knew, and some of the blockers on the right side knew, and they hit that one big. So a couple other key points. Ayersville would end up going on to drive 92 yards to fire back from that in 3 plays, which just goes to show how scary that offense can still be. And Ayersville ended up recovering the pursuing onside kick and was able to move the ball on the ground. And things did get interesting, and this is what we watched. And Ayersville ran it into a 3rd and 4th on Antwerp's 39-yard line, where they got a defensive offsides penalty called on Antwerp after going with the hard count. So that ended up sealing the game. Let's go into some top players to note. Ayersville running back Torrin Knieven, 27 carries, 198 rushing yards, 7.3 yards a carry, 1 rushing touchdown. Athlete Abe Delano, 20 carries, 92 rushing yards, 4.6 yards a carry with 2 rushing touchdowns. Linebacker Brady Clark, 5 tackles, which led the team in 1 tackle for loss. And from Antwerp, quarterback Carson Altimus, 17 of 28, 61%, 261 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He did have 1 interception, though. Wide receiver, defensive back, Landon Brewer had a very good performance. 6 receptions, 116 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. He had 6 tackles, 2 pass deflections, and he had a pick 6 on defense. And linebacker Reed Leachy had 13 tackles, which led the team in 1 sack. So, guys, thoughts on this game here?
Go ahead, guys. Jump in there.
The one thing I was looking at, Logan, you had some of the stats down here for Aldemus as far as his run game has been. We kind of noticed it back when Tinora played them, that they really don't run the ball nearly as much as they did last year. Looking at last year's season, Aldemus ran for almost or just over 927 yards for 21 touchdowns through the course of 14 games. But now they're through 8 games, and he only has 146 rushing yards with four TDs. That really takes away their dimension a little bit. We always talk about teams have to have more than one dimension. And when teams don't, your opponents don't have to take that into consideration, it's a lot easier to key in on some of the bigger, longer plays and kind of shut down the pass game when they don't really have to stack the box, stop the run game. And I'm not sure if that maybe comes from like the injury Altimus had at the end of the season last year, if he's a little more cautious, or if maybe that's just they changed their game plan. I'm not sure what's going on with that this year, but I don't know.
Yeah, this is a heck of a game to watch this in person. Like I said, we watched about the last 4 or 5 minutes of it when we were wrapping up our equipment last Friday night. But Yeah, Antwerp, it's just like they basically have the same team back last year outside of a couple graduations, and it's just like they're missing something this year. I'm not sure what it is, but like Logan said, a loss like this could be an eye-opener, to get your mind and everything kind of back on track. But teams can run on. We like Tinora showed that they could move the ball up and down against Antwerp and run it. And here, I think Ayersville threw for 5 yards, and the rest was just rushing yards. But as talented as Antwerp is, they just seem like they're just missing something this year, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like you talk about the running game, Keith, and Tinora pounded the ball on them pretty hard, averaging a little over 5 yards carry, and so did Ayersville. And we knew we've talked about this several times. If a team's going to beat Antwerp, they're going to have to run the ball against them, and Antwerp's going to have to stop it, and they weren't able to stop it this time. And the weather, I'm sure, was a factor. I'm sure it was raining there, and I'm sure that played a big factor in a throwing game, especially if it was windy like it was at our place.
Yeah,
at Tinora, the flag was flying straight out. So you get weather conditions where you can't throw the ball like you were supposed to or like you're used to, and then all of a sudden now you got to rely on your run game, and like AJ expressed, your quarterback's not running the ball anymore, so now you're more kind of even more one-dimensional because you only got one guy running the ball versus a couple. I mean, I'm sure all of that kind of play together, but I agree with you, Keith. This could be an eye-opener. Hopefully it's an eye-opener.
Yeah, and I want to go back to Keith's point. I think that's a very valid point because I've seen it before where teams – they're supposed to. There's a lot of pressure on teams coming back. Like you said, Antwerp only lost a couple of starters. They brought back everyone this year. There's a lot of pressure on teams like that. And if you're going to have a loss, I'd rather have it now. For Antwerp, the Green Meadows Conference, they're still right there. They have a share of that as long as they went out the rest of the year. So you have a Green Meadows Conference championship. Check that off. But at the same time, I'd rather have a loss now than having a loss in the first or second round of the playoffs. So I think this is, if Antwerp can take this loss and they can be critical of themselves and learn where their weaknesses are, where they can improve, I still think Antwerp is a very good team. I just think it's an eye-opening experience. I've played on teams like that personally. Like when I went to the University of Findlay and we played, I believe it was my redshirt freshman year when we were playing. We had a loss to one of our rivals in the conference in Ohio Dominican. And that really opened our eyes, and we ended up going on to the NCAA Division II playoffs, and we played the number 2 team in the country. And even our head coach, Coach Allen, will attest to it. If we did not have a loss that game later in the season, he doesn't think that we would have beat the number 2 team in the nation to win in the playoffs. And I totally agree with that because you get like this attitude being on a part of a team like that. You start rattling off wins. You get a lot of hype talking about. It's very easy to kind of overlook the little things that you're used to doing. So I think at the end of the day, I think this loss will actually serve Antwerp well going forward.
Yeah, I agree, Logan. I mean, like you said, even Coach Billman said that after the game, listening to their post game on My Sports Live, he said, really, the only thing this did was break their winning streak, their long-term winning streak. Every other goal is still out there. GMC, playoffs, great senior class. So honestly, nothing was lost other than this may put them back on the track and keep them more focused.
Yeah, I mean, think about that senior class. We don't know what they're going to do from here on out, but first game they've lost in 23 regular season games. You know what I mean? So they've got a pretty good record going. So I mean, and it's still out there, like you said. Nothing's out of the mix yet.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the beginning of the year, and when you talk about team goals, all those goals are still there, like we said. So I think Antwerp goes out. I think they achieve them. And I think they get back on track come playoffs for Division 7 in the state of Ohio. All right, let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Lima Bath at Defiance. And this game was close, and it was won 28-27 thanks to a blocked extra point by the Defiance Bulldogs. And this is Defiance's third game this season that was decided by 1 point. And you're looking at Van Wert. They ended up losing 42-43. Elida, they ended up losing, I believe it was either 18-19. And then Lima Bath, they came up on the winning end, 28-27. So a lot of games decided by 1 point. And I don't know that I've ever seen a season be decided by that few points and that many games in one season. Looking at total yards for this game, Defiance had 321, 230 rushing. Lima Bath had 281 yards with 158 rushing. Turnovers, Defiance had 3, 2 fumbles and 1 interception. Lima Bath had 1 with 1 fumble. Looking at key players from Defiance, athlete Anthony Wilder had an excellent performance, 7 carries, 68 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 4 receptions, 56 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. And he's just one guy in that offense that seems to be coming alive here, especially in the second half of the season. He really creates a spark for that Defiance Bulldogs offense. Running back Brogan Castillo had 18 carries, 128 rushing yards. Quarterback Brez Zipfel was 9 of 18, 50% completion percentage, 91 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, 7 carries, 21 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. So thoughts on the Lima Bath at Defiance game?
Well, the positives for Coach Cooper and the Bulldogs, you hung on to win. Another positive, have you kind of established, whether purposely or not, like a 3-headed monster back there at running back somehow. Anthony Wilder's name's thrown into the mix, and he's had back-to-back good games in the backfield. On the dark side here, looking, if you're a Bulldog fan, it's going into the fourth quarter, you almost want to close your eyes anymore. It's like Defiance can't put together a solid 48 minutes here in the last month. Coach Cooper almost wants to hide his eyes in the last 4 minutes. Like, here we go again. But they pulled out a win, and it's like I said last week, it can only make you stronger. But then again, it's like seems to be happening more and more frequent. You go into the fourth quarter with a lead, like a substantial lead.
Yeah, substantial. That's what I was going to say.
And then you just come up like, oh boy, your heart's like, here we go again, guys. Hold on, grab the sides of the boat.
Yeah, I wonder if you see this a lot in college football, and teams get up and then they start playing that to not lose, and then things start going crazy, and they're playing more of this prevent, and quarterbacks are just picking you apart, right. and next thing you know, you're like, oh, okay, they scored, and then you don't get a first down because all you're doing is trying to pound the rock, and they stopped you, and then you get to kick the ball back to them, and then they score again. It's like, okay, we got to do something. And I think that happens a lot. I don't know what happened in this game. I wasn't there, but sometimes you see that happen, where teams get into this where they start playing that fourth quarter to not lose instead of just playing their game and just keep doing what they've been doing the whole game. And but good win for Defiance. Way to squeak this one out. Keeps them in the conference championship hunt, right? It's still,
I believe.
They knock off Salina. That would be 2 losses for Salina too, right?
No, I think Salina. I don't think Salina has a single loss. I don't know if they do.
7-1, aren't they?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look up on that. I don't know if one of you guys want to check real quick.
Yeah, I'm checking.
But nonetheless, I mean, Defiance is still in the hunt to be towards the top of the WBL, and on
you got Salina listed as 7-1. You have them as 7-1. I don't know.
Yeah, they're 7-1 in
they
the
lost
WBL.
for sales.
Wapak's 6-1 and
sales. So they're still undefeated in the WBL.
Yep. Okay, so never mind then.
Yeah, but I mean, you never know if Salina loses this week and they lose next week. I mean, that can make some contention, but nonetheless, for Defiance to finish at the top of the WBL, and we talk about the Western Buckeye League is one of the stronger conferences in Northwest Ohio, and probably even, I would say, the state almost too.
You got to come to play every single Friday night. It's like you don't get a breather in there. So
who's the third running back?
I was thinking about that too.
I can't think of the third.
Abel Rubio.
Yes.
Rubio.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought his last name was Abel. I can't think it was, but
and Lima Bath's a quality opponent too. So Lima Bath was in a shootout with Van Wert earlier in the year, and Van Wert beat Defiance. So it's just everyone beats up on each other in the WBL. So for Defiance to come out with this on top, you can't discredit getting a win. But at the same time, just trying to look forward how they can improve in the second half of games to maintain those leads. Let's look at the next game here. And this one was another thriller. Clay at Napoleon, and this game went into 3 overtimes. I actually caught the rest of this game on 103.1. And it was exciting to listen to. And Napoleon won 35-34. Napoleon won this game in the 3rd overtime, in which they intercepted a pass from Clay's quarterback, Mason Heinschel, who attempted to go for 2 in the win. At halftime, Napoleon was up 21-7. Again, common theme, talking about teams being up at halftime. But Clay would outscore Napoleon 14-0 in the second half that led to overtime. Looking at total yards, Napoleon had 271 yards, 198 rushing. Clay had 436 with 356 rushing, so a lot of rushing yards in this game. Turnovers, Napoleon had 0. Clay had 2 fumbles. Looking at key players from Napoleon, running back Devin Dietrich, 8 carries, 102 rushing yards, good for 11.5 yards a carry with 2 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Owen Espinoza was 6 of 13, 46% completion, 73 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Running back George Eggers, 2 carries, 38 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He had 2 receptions for 16 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. And defensive lineman Henry Eggers, it's good to see him back out there. I know he's been battling injuries this season. He's back, and he had 6 tackles and 2 sacks, so already making a huge difference in this game back for him. Thoughts on the Clay at Napoleon game?
AJ, what do you think?
I was looking at Espinoza there. He only threw the ball 6 times, but 2 of those were passing touchdowns, so that's efficient. You're not throwing much, but when you do, it's getting you some points on the board, which is awesome. I did have a question. What method does high school football use for overtime? Do they do alternating possessions, or do they put time on the clock?
I think they start at 20.
Start at the 20.
Start at the 20 and
college.
alternate possessions. Okay, I couldn't remember how they did it in high school, but man, 3 overtimes, that had to be a long game.
I think after the second overtime, you have to go for 2. I think that's the way they used to do it in college anyways. I think that's the way it is in high school. You have to go for 2. I don't remember. Maybe it's after the 3rd overtime. But one of those, you have to start going for 2 so you stop it.
I have to talk to somebody from Napoleon. Double check. But honestly, great outcome for Napoleon. It's always nice to be on the winning side of a game like this. It's a heartbreaker when you're not. I feel bad for Clay, but somebody's got to win the game, right? After 3 overtimes.
Yeah, I mean you run for you run for 356 rushing yards, put 436 yards on the board, and you come out and you lose. But 2 fumbles, I'm sure those are they probably were costly, untimely turnovers, but.
Right.
I don't see Trey Rubenstein's name, guys, so I'm not sure why his name's not on there. That's you always see him week after week after week, and I don't see his name on there. So
I think that's one thing too. Obviously, teams know about him. Right. I mean, I'm sure he's the number 1 guy on there that has circles all around it for offensive and defensive side of the ball.
Yep.
So I mean, you look at other guys stepping up, and all these guys did with George Eggers and Devin Dietrich. They really stepped up at running back, and I think it just goes to show, we talked about going into the season. I believe Napoleon ran the ball like 73% of the time last season. They've really showed that they're dynamic on the offensive side. Just a few weeks ago, we saw Owen Espinoza breaking the passing touchdown or passing yards record for Napoleon. So they're really showing that they can throw the ball if they need to, they can run the ball if they need to, but they're going to do whatever needs to be done to get a win. So I give kudos to Napoleon for really just trying to be multiple in that sense.
Yeah, quietly, Napoleon, as we said previously, they're playing some of the better ball in the area, and everybody that was upset about Napoleon football in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Oh yeah,
Napoleon's now 4-4, and I think they clinched a playoff spot. We'll get more into this next week, but I think they clinched a playoff spot and actually have a chance to host a playoff game.
No way, 4-4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Holy moly!
Yeah.
If they win out, be 6-4, but
yeah,
wow.
And I think it's just cool to see such a turnaround because at the beginning of the season, honestly, there was a lot of people you heard on social media, you heard people talking. You would have thought people were bringing their pitchforks and their torches around the Napoleon Stadium, but I'm glad for the coaching staff and the kids for sticking with it and really grinding through some adversity at the beginning of the season to really turn things around. Yep. And, if you would have said at the beginning of the season, Keith, like after dropping Defiance and Liberty Center, which obviously those are big rivalry games for them, but those are 2 really good teams. Yeah. I would have said you're crazy, but they turn things around, and now they have a chance for A, a playoff berth, and B, a possible home first round playoff game. That's excellent. Hats off to Napoleon.
Yeah, good thing for Coach Schwery and his kids just to put the blinders on, you put the headphones on, and just don't listen to any outside noise. And they've done a great job.
Yes, indeed. So let's move on to the next game. We're looking at Archbold at Wauseon. Archbold came away with this rivalry win, 34-14, and this Archbold win actually makes 7 in a row against Wauseon, and this was for the Lions Club trophy. And I didn't realize how big of a rivalry game this is. I've had people told me this is like do or die. This is like Ohio State-Michigan type rivalry, and I never, really realized that from Archbold and Wauseon. But halftime score was Archbold. They were up 14-7. Looking at total yards, Archbold had 318 yards, 175 rushing. Wauseon had 248 yards, 244 passing. Turnovers, Archbold had 4, 2 fumbles, and 2 interceptions. Wauseon had 1, which that's very unusual. We talk about the turnover battle all the time, and typically if that margin is that lopsided, you typically don't end up with a win. So impressive out of Archbold to pull this one out. Looking at key players from Archbold, wide receiver Chase Miller had 3 touchdown receptions. Quarterback Cade Brenner, 4 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Athlete Jack Hurst had 1 rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown. And from Wauseon, wide receiver, defensive back, Mr. Showtime, Tyson Rodriguez, 5 receptions, 115 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. On defense, he had 5 tackles and he had 1 pick. Quarterback Trey Parsons was 16 of 30, 53%, 244 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and with 1 interception. Linebacker Austin Kovar, 12 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 1 interception on the defensive side of things. So, guys, thoughts of the Archbold at Wauseon game?
Wauseon played great most of the time. When you have a rivalry game or a big game, like I said, the last 2 or 3 weeks, you just can't get up the roller coaster hill to the top. You just can't get over to the bottom. But Coach Moore does a great job there. Don't get me wrong. It's just Wauseon, I don't know if it's a mental block with them. They just can't get over that hump when it comes to a rivalry game or a big game, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's just looking here at the stats, going on the huddle stats, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously Archbold shut down Wauseon's running attack. That they didn't have anything to running yard wise, but just enforced them to throw the ball, and Trey Parsons did a nice job, threw for 244 yards and a couple touchdowns, and but just couldn't get it going with running the ball, and Archbold just kept putting the ball in the end zone, unfortunately.
Yeah, and like Keith said, I think with Wauseon, it's got to be almost a mental block because, the talent's there, the coaching's there.
Definitely. Yep.
Wauseon usually has a rich football tradition and culture as well. And like you said, it's just one of those things, like they've got all the pieces, and it's just they can't get it done when it needs to be done. So, that's one thing. I don't know how you turn that around because when it's something mental, like that's hard to flip the switch and try to get things over the hump. But on the flip side of Archbold, 7 in a row against your rival, very impressive. And Archbold, they're sitting there right behind Liberty Center as number 2 in the conference. And, Archbold's got another big one this week and Patrick Henry. So I think that will be a really good matchup. And we'll kind of talk about that later in the podcast. But,
outside of Liberty Center, Logan, Archbold has pretty much dominated all their opponents.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's just one thing with Archbold and Coach Dominic. He's always got the kids. They play very good fundamental football, and it's just hard to pick Archbold apart. And we saw when they played Tinora, we really didn't think they had many weaknesses, and I actually picked Archbold against Liberty Center because everyone from their linemen to their linebackers to their quarterback and specialists, it did not look like they had a single flaw in them. So, Archbold's going to be a tough out, especially when it comes to the playoffs. Let's move on to the next game. Looking at the Green Meadows Conference, Fairview at Wayne Trace, and this one was another close game, and Wayne Trace won this one 19-16. Wayne Trace came from behind to win this one, and Wayne Trace trailed 16-12 in the fourth quarter, so they really had to dig deep and pull this one out. Fairview was up 8-0 at halftime, and something looking at the stats, I could not believe that in this game there was more rushing yards than passing. Can you believe that? Yeah. Looking at this, Wayne Trace and Fairview combined to throw the ball for 35 total attempts. William Zedikes for Fairview has thrown the ball 50-plus times in a game this season. So it's like, what in the world is going on?
Raining and windy.
Yeah, that's true too. But still, I would have thought they'd throw the ball more than that. Total yards, Wayne Trace had 323, 173 rushing. Fairview had 289 with 213 rushing. Turnovers, Wayne Trace had 0. Fairview had 1 with a fumble. Looking at top players from Wayne Trace, running back Tucker Antone, excellent performance out of him. 27 carries, 147 rushing yards, good for 5.4 yards a carry with 1 rushing touchdown. He had 1 12-yard passing touchdown, and he had 5 receptions for 40 receiving yards. And quarterback Kyle Stoller was 13 of 22, 59% with 138 passing yards. For Fairview, wide receiver Logan Ollinger, 10 carries, 43 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 2 receptions for 63 receiving yards. Running back Gavin Garza had 8 carries for 76 rushing yards, and quarterback William Zedike was 5 of 13 for 76 passing yards. So thoughts on this matchup here?
This is not the score outcome that I was expecting from Wayne Trace Fairview. The way that Wayne Trace played against Tinora when we watched that game was a pretty tough fought fight, especially coming to the end of the game. Now they did rely a lot on their pass game to get there, but to come out against Fairview and be down at halftime is really shocking to me. Or even actually coming in the fourth quarter. It wasn't even a halftime. It was fourth quarter. They were still trailing yet.
And you know for sure, and we were out there on Friday night, no matter where you were in Northwest Ohio, the weather was playing a factor, whether you think so or not, because for them to have, just looking at rushing yards, obviously both coaches knew that they're going to have to keep it on the ground because you can't throw the ball into a 25-mile-an-hour wind. You can throw with it, which we saw at the Paulding Tinora game. That will really help you. But throwing against it's a different story, especially when it's wet. It's hard for those receivers to look it in and catch it, especially at the high school level.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Logan. It's kind of like a cat and mouse game between both coaches. You want to run the ball against the wind and try and just grind it out, get first downs, and eat the clock up. So then when you get the win, then you can air it out. But apparently both teams were tugging at the same part of the string, and neither one actually accomplished what they wanted to. But yeah, to see Z-Dyke with just 76 yards on 13 attempts is, heck, that's like a first quarter stat for him.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. They only threw the ball 13 times, but yeah, obviously the weather was a factor in a lot of games this past weekend, and at Sonora's field faces east and west. So one time they were going into the wind and one time they were going with the wind. Fairview's field faces north and south, so the wind's going to be blowing across the whole time. So it's just going to be, you're not going to be able to throw the ball very well in that kind of wind and rain and as hard as it was coming down. But I'm with AJ. If you would have told me that Wayne Trace would be trailing in the fourth quarter, even with the rain and wet weather, I'd have been like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But, man, kudos to Fairview for putting up a fight.
Yeah, that's something we said too. Fairview's got a lot of young talent. Most of those kids are freshmen and sophomores, so Fairview's got some things to look excited for, and definitely have a good game this week. That's another winnable matchup for them. So,
but one thing I want to point out, the turnover battle, AJ.
Yeah.
One fumble was the only turnover in the whole game with the weather the way it was. I'm like, that's not a usual Wayne Trace game. Wayne Trace has 4 turnovers in a regular night. I can't believe with the weather the way it was.
Sunny, warm, crisp night. They have 5 turnovers in a game. This one had 1 in rain and cold, and it's
couldn't believe it.
Not a typical Wayne Trace game.
Well, and I mean, you look at that, and Wayne Trace, they were +1 in the turnover battle. That could have been the difference in the game. One possession absolutely. That they didn't turn over, and Fairview did. I mean, that could definitely have affected the outcome of that game.
Definitely.
Let's look at the next game. Montpelier at Northwood. Montpelier ended up winning this one 21-12. Montpelier jumped out to a 14-6 halftime lead. Looking at total yards, Montpelier had 269 yards, 149 rushing. Northwood had 181 yards, 170 rushing. Turnovers, Montpelier had 3. 2 interceptions, 1 fumble. Northwood had 2, 1 fumble, 1 interception. Some top players from Montpelier: running back, linebacker Griffin Cooley, 22 carries, 76 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. On defense, he had 6 tackles, 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss with 1 interception on defense. Quarterback Hayden Sharps was 7 of 15, 120 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He did have 2 interceptions, but he had 18 carries, 70 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. And wide receiver Cam Smith had 4 receptions for 46 receiving yards. So thoughts on this matchup here?
Yeah, you look at Montpelier, just again, they're doing well, is just kind of clicking along, getting win after win here. Unfortunately, we just talked about turnovers, and then all of a sudden now through this game they had 5 turnovers. So,
right.
But yeah, just they did win the turnover battle, so that could have been the one position they needed.
And these are crunch time games for Montpelier, and we talked before, if Montpelier wants a chance at a playoff berth, they have to win these games the next few weeks for them to be in contention for it. So for the kids at Montpelier, play every single effort, every single play as hard as you can, because these are the ones that matter. And the last thing you want is to not have a playoff berth, especially for those seniors. So, such a great season for the Locomotives, and we want to see them continue.
Yeah, basically, capping this off, Logan, Montpelier, Coach Robinson, a fantastic season. Basically, their playoffs is this Friday night. I mean, they have to beat Ottawa Hills to actually more likely make the playoffs. So,
I mean, at this point, every game from here on out is a playoff game in their eyes, because they have to win everything from here on out to like you said, even have contention. If they lose one of those, they're most likely on the outside looking in. So they pretty much have to win out from now till through playoffs if they want to get in.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. Looking at a Northwest Ohio Athletic League matchup, Liberty Center at Evergreen. Liberty Center up winning this game 48-6. Liberty Center was up 28-0 at halftime. Total offense, Liberty Center had 316 yards, 250 rushing. Evergreen had 84 yards with 80 rushing. Turnover battle in this one, Liberty Center had 2 with 2 interceptions. Evergreen had 1 with 1 interception. And I know we keep talking about the turnover battles, but I look and like half these teams that we've read so far, they lost the turnover battle and they've been winning these games. So that's just something interesting that kind of caught my eye going over these game recaps. But Liberty Center, some key players, running back Colton Cruz, 9 carries, 119 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 2 receptions for 10 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. Running back Colton Chambers had 4 carries, 37 receiving yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Defensive lineman Landon Bockelman, 5 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. Quarterback Landon Amstutz threw the ball quite a bit this game, and we talked about all the other games opposite of not throwing the ball. When have you seen Liberty throw the ball 15 times in a game? So he finished with 66 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He did have 2 interceptions. But yeah, the key there was throwing the ball 15 times, especially when the weather like it was. So I don't know if that's something they were just trying to work on, but that was kind of interesting there. Evergreen, running back Max Mossing, 10 carries to 69 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Will Roots and Ryder Hudick both had 1 interception apiece on defense. So guys, thoughts at the Liberty Center at Evergreen game?
It's kind of like ho-hum, Liberty Center won again, but you just got to I just look at the numbers. Quality numbers, quality carries. They're just chewing up yardage on the ground, 8-10 yards a carry. Offensive line up front for Liberty Center is just dominating every single game. There's 2 teams this year that have scored 10 or more points against Liberty Center, and that was Tinora and Archbold, and that is it. Everybody else is 0-7, I think, or 3. Defense, as much as their offense is performing, their defense is playing just as well. So it's rough to find something to be discouraged about Liberty Center offensively or defensively.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, AJ.
I was just going to say that, you kind of said something there about the passing game and the interceptions and things like that. It does kind of seem like maybe they were trying to work on something, kind of planning ahead a little bit, because when do they ever throw the ball 15 times, like you said? So, and in that weather, having 2 interceptions could look bad, but in the grand scheme of things, they probably were just doing something to kind of test the waters a little bit. That to me does not tell me anything about what's going to happen in the future with Liberty Center's offense, because I'm sure that's going to go right back to them pounding the ball again next week.
I'm just sitting there thinking in my head, I think Evergreen's field sets east and west as well, if I remember right, being over there. So does Liberty Center's. But maybe they were just throwing with the wind and just trying it out. Like you guys said, just playing around and seeing what they could do when they had the wind behind them. But, yeah, I mean, you look at Liberty Center, just we've talked about Antwerp getting their, kind of getting their bell rung a little bit, waking them up. It's for Coach Muller is going to have to keep these guys focused because they're winning so dominantly, and their starters probably aren't playing more than 3 quarters. AG, you were there the year you guys went down and beat everybody by 60 points just about every game except for one against Parkway, and it's tough to keep that focus week after week after week, and then when you get into that playoff, then you're going to start facing some teams that are going to put some pressure on you.
Yeah, I do want to give Evergreen props. So for them to only be down 28-0 at halftime, I think that speaks a lot about Evergreen, just the kids trying to fight, especially against Liberty Center, because Liberty Center is just one heck of a team, and they're a meat grinder. Teams come into town or they roll into the other opponent's place, and they just chop you on down each week. And, for Evergreen, I think they're still trying to take that next step in the program. They've had a lot of changes. I think they've had, 3 coaches in the last 3 years there, similar to what Fairview's had. Right. So, I think Coach Box there is doing a nice job, but it's just going to take some time again for Evergreen and the Vikings. So let's move on to the next game. A few more games here down the list. Looking at Delta at Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry won this game 50-7, and I got to say, I was not expecting that out of Patrick Henry at all. We saw Delta go out and compete. They really put up a fight against Bryan earlier in the year, some other teams. I would have thought this game would have been a lot closer than what it was. But you look at it, Patrick Henry dominated this game. They were up 44-7 at halftime. Total yards, Patrick Henry had 373 with 260 passing. Delta had 69 yards with 121 rushing. And looking at the turnover battle, Patrick Henry had 0. Delta had 1. And actually, I think a correction. I think it was 260 rushing is what they had. looking at key players from Patrick Henry, running back Houston Miranda. There's your boy, Keith.
Yes.
12 carries, 110 rushing yards with 9.2 yards a carry, 4 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Lincoln Krieger doing the best he can and doing a really nice job at filling in for Nash Meyer. Was 6 of 6, 88 passing yards with 1 passing touchdown. He had 2 carries for 73 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. And wide receiver Landon Johnson had 2 receptions, 45 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. And then on the flip side, Delta quarterback Justin Ruppel, he had the lone rushing touchdown for Delta. So thoughts on the Delta at Patrick Henry game?
Guys, when I look at this, you looked at last week and everybody was we were kind of down on PH a little bit, because they got throttled by Liberty Center. But, you think about Lincoln Krieger coming in his first game that he's, kind of thrown in there at quarterback. It's against Liberty Center of all places, right? And a lot of pressure there in that game, and comes out this week and then goes perfect, 6 for 6. And I think a lot of that could also be play calling. They went out there and I know Coach I probably went out there and says, okay, we got to do some things to slow this game down for him, give him some good look passes, something to build his confidence a little bit. And then obviously here Houston, just take the ball and do your thing. And I'm sure that helped him out as well.
Yeah, you talk about, too, putting your kids in positions to succeed. I don't think Lincoln's ever really played quarterback before in the past. So for him to go out there, be 6 of 6, I'm sure that the coaches are setting him up, high completion percentage throws, getting him in a rhythm. They still ran him. It's a lot of times when you have an athlete back there at quarterback, they obviously do athletic things. So he took off and ran a couple times, and, he had 73 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. So I think the bread and butter is they're going to have to run the ball now, just because of the fact that you don't have your star quarterback in Nash Meyer, who's been there for 2-3 years as a starter and a leader. And you've got someone back there now taking snaps that really hasn't ever done that in his entire football career. So, PH is going to have to adapt. I think they will. And obviously this game they did. And I think that obviously they proved me wrong. And I think they're going to continue to do that, for the rest of the regular season. I think playoffs will get a little more interesting. So let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Edgerton at Hicksville. Edgerton won this game 36-6. This win snaps a 5-game losing streak for the Bulldogs. Edgerton was up 21-6 at halftime. Total yards, Edgerton had 276, 182 rushing. Hicksville, I did not get yardage for them. Turnover battle, did not have anything for them as well. But a couple key players. Edgerton, wide receiver, defensive back, Corey Herman had 2 receptions, 53 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. He had 1 interception return for a touchdown on defense. Running back Owen Roth, 8 carries, 79 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Quarterback Maddox Baker was 7 of 12, 58%, 94 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He did have 1 interception. He also had 8 carries for 55 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. And linebacker Joel Walkup, 6 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. And Hicksville wide receiver Brant Langham had 1 touchdown reception. So thoughts on the Edgerton at Hicksville game?
Good to see Edgerton back in the win column. Been a rough year for them. They're young as well, similar to Fairview. A lot of graduations last year for Edgerton, but good to see Edgerton back in the win column. We'll see them Friday night at Edgerton, my favorite place to go.
It is a cool place to even as an opponent, it's a cool place to go in there because you're so close with everybody, and it's a fun atmosphere. Sometimes it's a little intimidating, but it is fun.
Absolutely. It's great.
At the very least.
Awesome.
It is cool to see Edgerton not only get their win, but to win fairly big. Up 21-6 at halftime, you're probably kind of coasting a little bit through the second half. Obviously, you want to stay ahead, but you're not going full bore. So, to come out with 36-6, pretty good win for them.
Yeah, and like I said, you playing at Edgerton, I'm sure it was raining there as well as it was everywhere else, and they played at Hicksville though. But you don't have no idea what happened in the weather. Everybody seems like everybody was rushing the ball a lot more than they were throwing the ball this past week.
For sure. Okay, a couple 11-man games here left. Looking at Van Wert at Lima Shawnee. Van Wert won this game 40-26. And this game was close at halftime. Van Wert was just up 13-12. Total yards, Van Wert had 396, 265 rushing. Shawnee had 236 with 139 rushing. Turnover battle, again, we saw there's been a ton of turnovers from I'm talking about all games last Friday, and this one had a lot again. Van Wert had 4 with 4 fumbles. Shawnee had 4, 1 fumble, 3 interceptions. Some key players from Van Wert: quarterback and defensive back Brylan Parker, 7 of 14 passing, 110 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He had 27 carries, 148 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, with 1 interception on defense. Running back Briston Wise had 22 carries, 108 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He was 2 of 2 passing, and he had 1 passing touchdown. Wide receiver Connor Campbell, 5 receptions, 95 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And defensive back, wide receiver Micah Cohen, 1 pick 6 on defense, and he had 1 receiving touchdown on offense. So thoughts on the Van Wert and Lima Shawnee game?
Good to see Van Wert back on the winning streak. 2 games. I believe it's against Shawnee and OG, however. But it's good to see Van Wert back on track.
Yeah, it's they're gonna play down the stretch here and see what happens. Brylan Parker was back doing his kind of thing there, running the ball for
getting a lot of carries.
Yeah,
too.
20, I was going to say 27 carries, but yeah, doing his thing and not asking him to throw the ball a ton. So
yeah, I think honestly with Van Wert going the way they are, with them running the ball more with Brylan, I'm assuming he's got to be more comfortable with that, being an All-Ohio running back last season. So they're putting him in positions that he's comfortable, and trying to do his best at controlling the ball and not causing any turnovers. So, we'll see how Van Wert goes the last couple of games of the season here. Let's look at the next game, and we were at this game, Paulding at Tinora. Tinora came away with this game big, 56-0. Tinora was up 35-0 at halftime. Total yards, Tinora had 259, 173 rushing. Paulding had 67 with 55 passing. Third down conversion rate, and I had to throw this stat in here. Tinora was 5 of 8, 63%. Paulding was 1 of 11, 9%. Turnover battle, Tinora had 1 fumble. Paulding had 1 with 1 interception. So some key players from Tinora: wide receiver Owen Ackerman, 2 receptions, 63 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Quarterback Dominic Graziani was 3 of 5, 75 passing yards. He had 2 passing touchdowns, 9 carries for 38 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. Running back linebacker Joey Geisinger, 8 carries, 65 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and he had 1 interception on defense. And running back Grady Gusweiler, 11 carries, 39 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. From Paulding, linebacker Jack Woods, I couldn't believe this. He got hurt, and I believe it was an ankle sprain. He's doing okay now. He had 8 tackles. That led the team. He didn't even play half the game.
yeah, he wasn't even in there.
I couldn't believe that he led the team in tackles, which that was pretty impressive. And wide receiver Blake Roanhouse had 1 reception for 57 receiving yards. So, guys, we were at this game. What were your overall thoughts?
Kind of saw the weather take over Paulding a lot this game. We were kind of expecting a little bit more of a fight from Paulding. I kind of figured Tinora would walk away with it at the end, but to see Paulding come out and they just struggled to control the ball. I think Huddle actually had the stat as 3 lost fumbles, but I think some of those were just snaps. They ended up recovering. So I don't think they actually had a fumble that they lost, but they had the ball on the ground so many times.
Yeah.
It was kind of hard to get anything going for Paulding when they couldn't get the snaps down right, couldn't get handoffs. There was a couple times where the ball was kind of in and out of the quarterback's hands on the snap and just kind of toss the ball to the running back and throws the timing off. And Paulding really just could not get anything going.
Yeah, I think that was the name of the game the other night. They just couldn't get. They were behind the sticks the whole game, and that third down efficiency, I think you said they were 1 of 11. I would bet 6 of those were 3rd and 20 or more.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, I mean they just kept snapping the ball like you said, just snapping the ball, and it was on the ground, rolling back there, and they go back and chase it and run and get tackled, and but yeah, they were just playing from behind the sticks, and they dropped some wide open passes. I mean, they really struggled. I don't know if it was the weather or what, but yeah, I really expected Paulding to do a little better. But on the Tinora side of things, Paulding kind of picked on Tinora a little bit, showed a couple weaknesses there on some of those plays that Tinora is going to have to clean up themselves this coming week.
Yeah, particularly the pass coverage.
Yeah,
they were burned a couple times.
Yeah, there was a couple times that the guys were wide open, and it should have been 6 for Paulding, and they dropped it.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, it was kind of, for me, it was like Tenora's like your heavyweight contender, Paulding's your up-and-coming heavyweight contender, and Tinora just came out and just gave him one big old uppercut and knocked him out. Yeah, Tinora dominated from the opening kickoff to the final whistle. I think Paulding had minus 24 yards in the second half of total offense, if I remember. Coach Helton and his defense outside, I have a couple of breakdowns here or there, but just dominated. the entire game from start to finish. Offensively, Owen Ackerman, another good game. Another good game for Graziani. Didn't really have to throw a lot, but used his legs again when needed to, get the first down. So back-to-back good games for the Rams.
Yeah, and I guess I thought personally I was expecting a lot more out of Paulding. I've been talking all year about riding the Paulding train, and I just think, from the get-go, it was just like the energy wasn't there. Again, some drop balls, and I think obviously a lot of that comes to the weather. I think kids got big eyes right away. They were turning and looking before they actually looked in the ball, especially with it being wet out.
Right.
But it was hard again for them. You can't start off second and 20, second and 25 due to either penalties or fumbles or whatever. And, playing behind, I felt like they're just trying to play catch up the entire game, and that really wears on you as a team. So, Nonetheless, I think Paulding still has a good team. I think they're definitely going to improve, especially with years to come.
Oh, yeah.
But it just, it was a tough one, and this was really kind of the first big matchup they've had. I mean, they played Ayersville, and actually they had that game in the bag too.
Should have beat Ayersville.
But Paulding's getting to the point where they're riding up that roller coaster and they're trying to get to the top. So
yeah, and just another thing for Paulding, you talk about Jack Woods being out, but then the running back, he was out. Just so things weren't going Paulding's way, and then they ended up with a couple people sitting out of the game with injuries. So just added in kind of insult to the way the game was going.
I think it started off when they got the ball first, and they punted into the wind, and the ball went straight up, and the wind was so gusty it literally hit a wall and came straight down. And
honestly,
I don't even know if it went 10 yards, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that made a huge difference for them starting off into the wind compared to Tinora. Tinora was able to get off to that fast start and score some touchdowns right away. They were able to utilize the pass game, and they had a couple touchdowns. The first two scores for Tinora were passes to Owen Ackerman, throwing with the wind. So, it makes you wonder how that game would have turned out if Paulding had the win, because Paulding was more than capable of putting up 500 yards of offensive in a game, and they could throw the ball too. So just makes you wonder how the game would have gone if things would have changed like that.
Yeah, and that bad punt, and then Tinora come right back and punched it in the end zone with that one big long pass. Paulding kid fell down.
That was the opening touchdown.
The opening drive, and Ackerman wide open. So then it was just catch the ball and step in the end zone. So yeah, would have been interesting, but unfortunately for Paulding, the things didn't go right, and for Tinora, they did. So
still a quality team and a quality season for Coach Minzy and the Panthers, regardless of what happens the rest of the way.
All right, let's move on. Just a couple 11-man games. Just want to recognize some players. Really didn't have all that many stats. This was Swanton at Bryan. Bryan won 42-0. Some key players from Bryan. Running back Sam Harold, 20 carries, 219 rushing yards, good for 10.95 yards a carry. He continues to do Sam Harold things. 3 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Jace Kepler was 4 of 5, 51 passing yards, 9 carries for 70 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and running back Damian Wolf, 5 carries, 46 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. We'll move on to the next.
Hey, really quick, Logan, just talked about the Bryan. I was over at Bryan Thursday night for the 7th grade game. Man, what a beautiful facility they put in over there. Just top notch. And, their field is beautiful. The stands, they redid the stands. Their press box is huge. It's a double-decker, twice as long as what it used to be.
That's awesome.
It's they've actually, on the end of their bleachers, they put up so many bleachers, but then on the end of the bleachers, they put up like sections where you could sit chairs. It's like blocked up, and then
I've
it's
seen
like
pictures
flat
of that.
blocked
The terraced.
off both ends. They liked it so much on the north end. I was talking to one of the coaches. They liked it so much on the north end of the field that they did it on the south end, and it's even longer. So it goes all the way down, kind of around the end, not around the end zone, but clear to the end zone. So it's pretty cool. They did it. They did things right there, and hats off to all them people who went out and raised that money to get that done.
Yeah, I saw pictures of that, and it's pretty neat because it's tiered, right? Like there's different levels.
Yeah.
So if people want, they can bring their camping chairs, which everyone knows that those are more comfortable than sitting in some metal bleachers. But yeah, I did like that idea a lot. That was something I haven't really seen at a high school football stadium from around the area.
Yeah,
so,
but their press box is double-decker, and it's huge.
It's immaculate up there. It's very, very spacious, wide open. It's fantastic. I was up there taking stats for the game, and man, it was gorgeous up there. I did see you talking about camping chairs and things like that. I saw a couple of people with like those enclosed waterproof.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
they needed that Thursday night because it was pouring down rain.
It was pouring.
All right. just want to recognize one more 11-man game. Eden at Hilltop. Eden won 62-0. Some key players from Eden. Quarterback Kyler Sapp was 20 of 33, 61%. 301 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns with 1 interception. Wide receiver Colton Willis, 5 receptions, 96 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver Christian Owen, 7 receptions, 110 receiving yards. And linebacker Cole Olds had a fumble recovery for a touchdown on defense. Looking into our 2 8-man games, Sebring McKinley, 44 at Stryker, ended up losing and scored 24 points. Sebring McKinley jumped out to a 22-16 lead at halftime. Total yardage, Sebring McKinley had 450 yards. Stryker had 339. Turnover battle, Sebring McKinley had 3 fumbles, and Stryker had 1 interception. Some key players from Stryker, quarterback Jacob Caldwell was 20 of 41, 49%, 234 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns with 1 interception. He had 22 carries, 61 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Wide receiver Gavin LeBeau had 11 receptions, 139 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So thoughts of the Sebring McKinley at Stryker game?
Yeah, Stryker just can't put things together this season for whatever reason. Jacob Caldwell had a great season last year, and just for whatever reason, Stryker, the Panthers just can't put it together.
Yeah, it's once again we see the turnover battle. Lost the turnover battle, but won the game. So yeah, just kind of one of those weird weekends, I guess.
Yeah, it's Jacob Caldwell throwing for 49% completion. I'm sure it doesn't help, and I'm not sure if that's a combination of him missing his targets or communication between him and the receivers or drop passes. I don't know what's going on with that, but
threw the ball 41 times Friday night. That's
and the end of that. Wind, rain, right.
Yeah, I mean, Stryker's just, been a little bit down this year, but, they have good athletes. Jacob Caldwell goes out and he produces every week. Gavin LeBeau is a heck of a wide receiver, too. So it's just one of those things. I think at some point it becomes a mental block more than it is physical or talent-wise. So, hopefully the Panthers get things turned around in the last couple games of the season. So last 8-man game here, Toledo Christian at Holgate. And then this one was kind of a shocker. 2 big dogs in the Northern 8 Conference, and Toledo Christian came up with the win in this one, 20-14. Total yardage, Holgate had just 146 yards. Toledo Christian had 293. Turnover battle, Holgate had 2 with 1 fumble, 1 interception. Toledo Christian had 3 with 2 fumbles and 1 interception. Some top players from Holgate, quarterback, defensive back, Xavier McCord, 8 of 17 passing, 83 passing yards with 1 passing touchdown. He did have 1 interception, and on defense, he had an 85-yard interception return for a touchdown on defense. And wide receiver Isaac Mendoza, 3 receptions, 44 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Guys, so thoughts on this Northern 8 Conference game here?
Boy, I guess if you would have told me that Xavier McCord would have had less than 100 yards combined total offense, it would have told you you're nuts. I mean, when I saw that number, it's kind of like the gas that makes the motor run. And if you limit McCord, you're pretty well going to shut down the Holgate offense. And again, these 2 teams, they're kind of a rivalry. Toledo Christian just came out and pulled all the punches and shut down McCord.
Yeah, when I look at that, I know I've said it 100 times already, but the weather Friday night, I guarantee played a factor with McCord not being able to throw the ball. He only threw the ball 17 times, and again, we've seen him throw the ball 50 times a game. So, I guarantee that was a factor in the game.
Yeah, and I just have to laugh because this is another game. The team with more turnovers actually won the game. So I just couldn't believe it. Yeah. So, I mean, we talk so much about how there's all these analytics of if you win the turnover battle, but I guess they're proven wrong sometimes. So, yeah. All right. Well, that concludes our game recaps. We're going to go ahead and take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. 3Chord is a family-owned and operated business who offers the highest quality embroidery, screen printing, sign and promotional items to customers in Northwest Ohio at competitive prices. Locations in Archbold, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Check them out at 3chord.com. That's THREECORD.com. BSN Sports is your go-to business for purchasing uniforms, equipment, spiritwear, and anything else your athletic program needs, giving you more time to impact lives on the field. With over 1,200 sales professionals who live, work, and serve in your community, we are always just a short drive or phone call away. Be sure to give your local sales rep and Jim Garris a call for any of your athletic supply needs. We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we're looking at Player of the Week from Week 8. So we'll go ahead and we'll read the list of some nominees here, and the guys will pick out a couple players who caught their eye, and then I'll release who our NWO Sports Player of the Week is. So let's roll through the list. Looking at the first guy, For Columbus Grove quarterback Landon Best. Ayersville running back Torrin Knieven. Antwerp wide receiver defensive back Landon Brewer. Defiance athlete Anthony Wilder. Napoleon running back Devin Dietrich. Archbold wide receiver Chase Miller. Wayne Trace running back Tucker Antone. Montpelier running back linebacker Griffin Cooley. Liberty Center running back Colton Cruz. Patrick Henry running back Houston Miranda. Bryan running back Sam Harold. Eden wide receiver Colton Willis. Eden quarterback Kyler Sapp. So guys, who are some players that you were looking at for player of the week?
Keith, you want to lead us off here?
I got a couple to touch on. Not really an athlete, but Coach Casey Hilton did a heck of a job last week in the defensive staff for the Rams. But all joking aside, yes, Houston Miranda back on the list. Fantastic game again for Houston. 12 carries, 110 yards, and you average close to 10 yards a carry and throwing 4 touchdowns. Patrick Henry's back on the tracks. Coach I probably gave him a little inspiration, like, hey, look at all these doubters. Doubt you. Now go prove them wrong. So good to see Patrick Henry back in the win column. But yeah, Houston Miranda throwing his name into the hat for player of the week.
I actually was pretty impressed with Eden's quarterback, Kyler Sapp. I know they played Hilltop, which has been struggling this year, and it's a Bobo on offense, very pass heavy, but he did manage to throw for 301 yards in the rain and cold and everything this past weekend. So to be able to throw for that many yards, that many completions, and 4 passing touchdowns, that's impressive. And I don't care who you're playing against. To be able to complete those passes is impressive in the conditions they're playing in.
And for me, I liked Bryan running back Sam Harold, 219 yards, basically just shy of 11 yards a carry. Dominant performance there with 3 touchdowns on top of that.
And the guy, after looking at everything, really ended up being, honestly, probably the MVP of the game, was Ayersville running back Torrin Knieven. When you have 27 carries, 98 rushing yards, 7.3 yards a carry, and he did have a rushing touchdown, and he really led the movement of Ayersville's offense against a dominant Antwerp team that has had, I don't remember how many X amount of games they've won in the regular season.
23 straight.
23 to snap that, to beat them at their place too. Right. That was just a heck of a performance out of him and a great performance out of Ayersville as a team. So for that, his efforts deserve to be credited. And so your NWO Sports Player of the Week for Week 8 is going to be Ayersville running back Torrin Knieven. And our Player of the Week will receive NWO Sports gear courtesy of BSN Sports. And again, we thank BSN Sports as they get those shirts around. I believe we should have them hopefully by the end of the season here and get them sent out to everyone. So we appreciate BSN Sports and everything that they do for area athletics. Let's go ahead. We're going to move into power rankings for Week 9. And some things are starting to shake out here. A lot of teams are kind of proving us wrong and proving us right. And teams are moving up and down the list. So what we'll do is we'll start at number 25 and work our way down the list here and see what some of the changes are. Looking at number 25, Swanton, 24, Hilltop, 23, Hicksville, 22, Edgerton, 21, Fairview, 20, Evergreen. So thoughts on this group here?
Pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I don't have any issues with those.
Yeah. About where I would expect them to stay, really.
All right, let's look at the next group. 19, Delta, 18, Ottawa-Glandorf, 17, Paulding, 16, Montpelier, and 15, North Central. So a little bit of movement here.
Yeah, OG can pick up their first win of the year this upcoming Friday. So I'm pretty accurate on my point.
I still think Ottawa-Glandorf is much better than an 0-8 team.
Oh, without a doubt. I believe they're probably going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. Looking at the next one.
I was going to point out you Paulding dropped quite a bit, but after that display they put on Friday night, they deserved to take a little plunge.
Next group here, 14, Wayne Trace, 13, Eden, 12, Ayersville, 11, Tinora. We'll save the top 10.
I don't agree with Tinora, Logan. Why did they drop after putting a thumping on Paulding? You have to explain that one to me.
Well, I guess my reasoning is I looked at some other teams. I think, and you look, they dropped one spot, but look at the team of, well, we'll get to it in a second.
Right.
I definitely put and I'll go into it now. Patrick Henry, I put way too low. I had him at 15 last week, and there was a lot of backlash, as you can imagine, from some Patriot fans.
I'm sure.
So I would have thought they would have done a lot. The game between Patrick Henry and Delta would have been a lot closer, but Patrick Henry showed that they still have a lot of athletes and a lot of firepower to go out there and win. And I think at the end of the day, I always like to compare head-to-head matchups. So if Patrick Henry would play Tinora, who would end up winning that game? And, I had to move Patrick Henry up in that sense.
I still think they're the 5th ranked team in the state in Division 7. So,
yeah, and even though they lost their star quarterback in Nashmeyer, they've got a lot of good players, especially, Keith's favorite and running back Houston Miranda. Lincoln Krieger is an excellent athlete. He's doing a very good job at taking over the reins at quarterback for Patrick Henry in their offensive and defensive lines. So that's why Tinora dropped a spot. So
I think I would have dropped one of the other ones down below, and Tinora would still be in the top 10 in my opinion. But I'm just picking on you.
I could see. Well, I guess we haven't really gotten to top 10, but I could see a couple of those teams dropping a little bit farther.
Yeah, I think the thing, and we've followed Tinora more than anyone else this season. It's which Tinora team are you going to get? It's the consistency. Are we going to see a Tinora team that is gritty and goes out and beats a quality Ayersville team, or are we going to see a Tinora team that comes out against Archbold or Liberty Center? Liberty Center even they came out, but we've just seen a lot of inconsistencies this season so far.
Yep.
Look at that top 10. Obviously, we've said earlier, Patrick Henry, number 9, Wauseon, number 8, Brian, number 7, Napoleon, number 6, Van Wert, and we'll save the top 5.
Boy, I'd like to see Napoleon and Van Wert play right now.
Let's see Napoleon and Brian play.
Yeah.
Well, Brian and Wauseon are going to play this week, so there's an 8-9 matchup. I think that will be interesting, and that will kind of shake some things up as well. I don't know. I still think, I know Napoleon's 4-4, and they started out at 15 earlier in the season, but like we said, Napoleon's on a roll. Yeah. It's just that, they played a couple of those bigger teams in the Buckeye division of the NLL. Now they're playing teams in their own Cardinal division, and they're starting to win them. And like I said earlier, their offense is starting to become very dynamic. They can run the ball when they want to. They can pass the ball. So I think Napoleon's a good team. Yeah. I really do.
Definitely. So. And like we said, they've pretty much eliminated Trey Rubenstein a lot here during this 4-game winning streak. Had the heck of a game 2 weeks ago. That was on defense.
Yeah. So, all right, let's look at the top 5. And we have actually some changes in the top 5 the first time in a while. Coming in at number 5 is Antwerp, number 4, Columbus Grove, number 3, Defiance, number 2, Archbold, and number 1, Liberty Center. Thoughts on the top 5?
I mean, with Columbus Grove, the way they've been playing, they could definitely be up there. Defiance has got to be careful, though. Defiance squeaking out some wins. So, but they're still winning. That's a good thing.
Yeah, so they're still getting the wins, so I don't see them dropping too far yet, as long as they continue to win. But like you said, they got to be careful. As far as Antwerp dropping a little bit, tough loss to Ayersville, so I agree with that one. Liberty Center, Liberty Center still holds strong, undisputed number 1.
Yeah, there's nobody close.
I look. I know Archbold's sitting at 2 right now, but Liberty Center beat them 42-14. So again, it's Liberty Center, a huge gap, and then the rest of the field. I still think it's going to be that way unless Liberty Center does something, I don't know, off the charts, goofy or not smart. Liberty Center. Again, I'll say I think they have a really good shot at winning a state championship this season. So,
hey guys, I just want to point something out. I was just kind of looking because kind of picking on Logan about Wauseon and Tinora, and but I looked at Brian, Wauseon, and Tinora, all 5-3, and you go back and look at their schedules. Look who their losses are to. Brian lost to Van Wert, Patrick Henry, and Liberty Center. Tinora lost to Liberty Center, Archbold, and Antwerp, and Wauseon, let me go back down to Wauseon here. Wauseon lost to Bellevue, which I don't know a whole lot about Bellevue, but then their other 2 losses are to Patrick Henry and Archbold, and they still have Brian and Liberty Center coming up. So,
yeah, I'll give a shout out to Brady Stabler, who's on another podcast similar to ours that I listen to weekly, and he actually made that point going into last week about the Tinora Paulding matchup. He went through and added up all the teams that Tinora has lost to this year and combined all their wins and gave their rankings like, hey, Liberty Center, 2nd in the state. Antwerp going into last week was like 5th or 6th in the state. And, very good point by Brady.
Archbold was what?
Brady.
Archbold's what, 5th in the region, right?
Yes, in Region 22, Division 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's something too. Just giving them a shout out, the Across the Field podcast with the Beckman boys, and they do a nice job. So especially for Paulding County, so be sure to check out their podcast. All right, we're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. For any of your auto body or collision needs, be sure to check out Bat & Stevens Body Shop, voted the #1 body shop in Northwest Ohio by Crescent News readers. Give them a call today at 419-497-3111 to schedule your free estimate. Check out Tinora Rams Live. Live events broadcast on YouTube and post-game results, articles, schedules, and more can all be found on TinoraRams.com. Feel free to look up their Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages as well. Fairchild Family Chiropractic aims to help families to get better together in the least invasive way possible. Dr. Fairchild focuses on the neck using the Blair technique and Palmer package, adjusting to correct spinal misalignments. Located in Defiance, Ohio, call Dr. Fairchild today at 419-576-5070 to schedule an appointment. Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty is a top real estate agent in Northwest Ohio. Crystal's compassion and enthusiasm allow her to find that special property or house just for you. Located in Bryan, Ohio, give her a call today at 419-799-1243. Jimenez Basketball Academy strives to create an atmosphere to cultivate basketball fundamentals in Northwest Ohio youth athletes, offering one-on-one sessions, group sessions, speed and agility training, and much more. Located in Pettisville, Ohio, call Coach Jesse today at 419-551-8105. The Drop Zone Pizzeria is the #1 voted pizza restaurant in the region. Check them out for pizza, wings, subs, and more. Located in Ayersville and Stryker, or ask them about their traveling food trailer. Optimal Performance Fitness is your go-to gym in Northwest Ohio, providing group fitness classes, personal training, and sports performance sessions for area athletes. Located in Napoleon, Ohio, give them a call today at 419-438-7265. We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we are into the hot takes presented by BSN Sports. Again, these are sent to us by fans, and usually on Sunday nights I put out something for everyone to submit them to me. So keep on submitting them. There's a lot of good ones, and we'll get into them here. So first hot take that was submitted to us is Torrin Knieven, running back from Ayersville, is slept on. And we talked about this earlier. I told the guys, we got a really good hot take, and this is the first one. And I'm going to say he is. We really haven't gave him enough credit. I know he was the NWO Sports Player of the Week this week, but you looking at season stats through 7 games. This is excluding last week, but he had 700 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, good for 5 yards a carry. He's really been the driving. I don't know what I want to say. The main component of that Ayersville offense that makes it go. I know they try to throw the ball here and there, but when they really need someone to fall back on, to rely on, to get them the big first down, it seems like Torrin Knieven is always that guy that is just reliable. He continues to produce each week. He may not have these fancy, 300-yard rushing games or 6 rushing touchdown games, but, he's going to go out there each week. He's going to give you 150 to 200 rushing yards and a couple scores, and, but that's just what Ayersville needs. So I'm going to have to agree with this one. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, with Tenora's defense shutting down Kobe 4, I think Knieven's now the leading rusher by probably 100 yards in the GMC. He probably was slept on going into last week, but his breakout performance against Antwerp's going to kind of thrust you into the forefront. So, but yeah, going into last week, he probably was slept on. But when you're the leading rusher in the GMC and you just had a fantastic game against a state-ranked opponent, your name's going to get thrown out there probably a little more than what it did in the previous 7 weeks.
I think he got slept on a little bit because everybody talked about Abe Delano, and Abe Delano was going to be the guy that was going to have to do some little extra work. And it sounds to me like Knieven has stepped up and said, "Okay, hey, I'll take that role," and just quite literally has ran with it.
Yeah. And I think this hot take goes, and you can't go without mentioning the offensive line of Ayersville. We watched them play against Tinora, and they are some big dudes up front, and they can move you when they want to. So I think that was the thing with them. They've got the size. They've got the power. It's just kind of consistency out of them. When they want to, they can be the best offensive line in Northwest Ohio. We've seen it, but, there's sometimes that they lack off a little bit. But if you get 110% out of those guys up front every single drive, we saw it in the Tinora game. They came out in the second half. They moved the ball down the field at will, and basically they said good luck, and no one could stop them. So, a lot of that credit does go to that Ayersville offensive line and those guys up front that really make those holes for Torrin to have success in a lot of these games. So I agree 110%. Torrin Knieven is slept on. Yep. Next hot take here. We're looking at Patrick Henry with the loss of Nashmeyer, wins big in the first round but gets upset in the second round. That's interesting. I'm going to have to look at the region. So
See who they would match up against possibly in the second round, because at this point, I mean,
Could be like, I would say maybe Ayersville, Antwerp, perhaps.
PH is going to host, correct?
yeah, PH is they've clinched already, and I assume that they've also clinched a home playoff game. But looking at number 16 right now, which is who they'd match up with, it would be Montpelier, but Montpelier has to win out. So, maybe possibly an Eden. Eden sitting
PH
at
is number
13.
1
yes.
in the region? Really?
Yeah. Yep, 7-1 with the record. They've got 14.8 points. And then the next closest is Tiff and Calvert, 7-0 with 14.1. So, and I think Patrick Henry, especially this week, if they beat Archbold, that's a lot of computer points. Yep. And then Swanton, which, they're probably the heavy favorites in that game as well. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'll have to look on the Drew Pastures website to see who possibly is projected there to face, because I think that could be kind of a big play out too. I don't know. I think they win the first round. I think second round is when it gets iffy. If they get past the second round, then things start getting more questionable. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think Coach I and Patrick Henry see what they do against Archbold this week. If they're competitive against that, they'll give them a little boost of confidence, even without Nash, and showing all year that they can run the ball outside of Liberty Center, which nobody can do anything against. So,
And Lincoln Krieger stepped into the quarterback role, and he's obviously going to be green, but he's an athlete, right? So he'll be able to at least be a threat. And he threw 6 for 6. So if Coach I is setting him up well for high completion percentage passes, and he's able to run the ball, because he ran it for almost, I think, 70, 80 yards. So he's still a threat.
So get this. I just pulled up Drew Pastors' Fantastic 50. And obviously we've been talking about him a lot, and we'll make an announcement later. But playoff scenario, so for 24% chance, if they win, there's a 24% chance if they win against Archbold, they win against Swanton. If they were to do that, the highest probable team is Eden at 25%. The next scenario, which could possibly be more likely, and they're giving 76% that they lose this week to Archbold, they win next week at Swanton. Guess the team that they play?
Ayersville.
North Central.
Ooh, North Central.
What kind of that'd be an interesting matchup, though. Yeah. Like we talk about North Central all year about playing. That's awesome. They've been having issues getting into conferences, but that'd be an interesting first round matchup.
Yeah, North Central wants to put the money where their mouth is. That's the game that they have to go out and win right there to kind of put themselves on the map.
Right.
At least compete very close in.
Yeah.
But
compete.
Yeah,
definitely compete.
Yep. But yeah, PH should win in the first round, but second round.
It just depends where they land.
I
see Lima Central Catholic land sitting there.
Yeah, I think Ayersville is a good chance for that second round matchup as well. I think they'll be about 8-9ish.
Yeah, Ayersville's sitting at 9 right now.
And I think
Lima Central Catholic sitting at 10.
Yeah, and this I think honestly would be a better hot take for next week when things kind of play out more.
Yep.
And like I said, we'll announce what next week's podcast is going to entail. But things can get interesting, and there's so many possibilities that can happen, and things can shake out. So actually, I believe, what was it, last year or the year before, Wayne Trace missed the 16 spot in the playoffs by 0.0.
I think it was last season, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was last year. They missed out on the 16th seed by 0.05 points or something.
I think so.
It's nuts.
They literally just missed it. So, but yeah, that could be interesting, and I think it really depends. And I like what we saw out of Patrick Henry against Delta. So that shows that they're adapting to what their offense needs to do, and even defense holding them to just one touchdown. I think that was always a question mark with Patrick Henry. But I think they're getting the job done, and I think this week will really tell a lot about Patrick Henry. So let's move on to the next one, and a lot of Green Meadows Conference ones this week. So this one is Paulding is okay, but not that good. The GMC is just down this year compared to the past. Who wants to start this one off?
Oh, boy. Paulding is good. Oh, Paulding is okay, but just not that good. Paulding's probably averaged a win or two in the last decade. Could finish 6-4, 5-5. Will they make the playoffs? That's still to be determined. More than likely, outside of a questionable, we're not going to say it's on the officials, but outside of a questionable call, should have beat Ayersville. Ayersville just beat Antwerp. So to say that Paulding's okay, just not that good, Unfortunately for Paulding, their GMC schedule is kind of backloaded this year, where all their tough opponents are their final 3 games. So if Coach Minzy finishes at 500, is that a successful year for the Paulding Panthers football program? I would say absolutely.
Yeah, the GMC saying the GMC is down this year.
You got 3 teams that are tied right now with 1 loss at the top of the GMC, so I don't think that they're down.
If you took those teams and put them someplace else and played it, I mean, Tinora played against Liberty Center. They matched up for a half. They did not play well against Archbold. We know that.
Yeah, circumstance. That's just a wash.
Yeah. There's circumstances going on around the team at that time with the death of Coach Becker's wife and all that kind of going on at the time. And so to say the GMC's down, I don't know. I mean, half of the GMC's down, right? You got Edgerton, Hicksville, and Fairview.
Right,
but it's like that.
Way down.
It's probably like that every year.
You have Wayne Trace kind of hanging there, Wayne Trace and Paulding in the middle. And then you got Ayersville, Antwerp, and Tinora kind of up there fighting, obviously all tied for the lead, right? So I don't know if the GMC's down compared to the past. You just don't have one team that's just out there kicking everybody's butt.
I think this is where my take comes in on this. I do agree. I think the Green Meadows Conference is down. My reasoning being, you go back 5-10 years ago, you're looking at teams like title contenders.
Oh, yeah,
you
Wayne
had
Trace.
You had Hicksville making previously, before I was in school, Hicksville made a Final Four. Wayne Trace made a state championship appearance. Tinora, we had 2 back-to-back state semifinal appearances. I just don't know if I see that out of any teams in the GMC. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, if that's
you look
what
at
you're going with,
and obviously they have good athletes. Don't get me wrong on that, but I'm talking elite regional final title state berth contenders. I don't know if I necessarily see that out of the Green Meadows Conference this year. I don't know. I guess just looking at things because before we've had guys in the GMC. I'm trying to think of what his name is from Edgerton. Hunter Prince.
Hunter Prince.
Him,
2,000 yards.
Riley Noggle that ran with me at running back. I'm trying to think who else. You had a lot of kids. Like those were guys that could go out and they could run for nearly 2,000 rushing yards in a season. I don't think you've really seen a true athlete like that. We have good athletes, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about next level elite athletes that, put the team and themselves, guys that go on to play at the next level too. I just don't know if I've seen that recently out of the Green Meadows Conference.
One thing also, you look at the Green Meadows Conference coaching staff right now, almost half the teams are new.
True.
That's true too.
In Coach Rake's, scenario, he's coming back for the first time after a hiatus off. So, yeah, they might be down a little bit this year, but because half the teams have new coaching staffs and new programs and things like that developing. So, yeah, I can agree that the Green Meadows Conference is down a little bit. Where Paulding falls into that, they're having one of the best years they've had in decades. So I don't know that I would take that away from them.
I think another thing, that's a very valid point too, AJ, with the Green Meadows Conference. You're seeing the second generation of coaches come in. So Green Meadows Conference in the past was notorious for having guys that were tenured 10, 15, 20 plus years at coaching. Yeah. And now you're getting this new generation of new coaches coming in. That means new culture, that means new playbooks, that means new everything. So I think that could be it too, because, these coaches have to establish their presence and what they expect out of the kids. And, it takes a lot to win games and to be on the same page. And I think once these younger coaches in the Green Meadows Conference, they get into a rhythm of getting things how they see it, how the players see it, I think you'll kind of see that return here of the Green Meadows Conference in the next, maybe 5 years or so. So I think that's the main thing, I guess, when I look at that.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the next one. Another Green Meadows Conference one. Actually, the next couple are Green Meadows Conference. Fairview is top 2 in the Green Meadows Conference next year. Thoughts on this one?
Top 2.
I don't know.
They got a very young roster. I'd say 2/3 of their roster is probably freshmen or sophomores.
I would say so. The kids that start.
Yeah,
too.
right.
I don't know that I would say they would be top 2 next year. They're definitely going to be highly improved next year, I think, with Coach Rakes leading the charge there. 2 years from now, they could definitely be sitting where Antwerp is.
I agree.
With as young as their team is, they're going to have a ton of experience in 2 years. Next year, I think they do a little more damage in the GMC. They sit a little higher, but I don't know that I would say they'll be top 2.
I agree. I give them 2 years. I think 2. Yep. Obviously, we know their offense is very potent and explosive. I think if the defense can improve and you can hold teams to under 20 points a game, which they've given up a lot, I do. I give them 2 years, and I think they put themselves in a position for title contention for the Green Meadows Conference.
Yeah, we're still looking at this year, but looking at next year, I mean, honestly, Tenora's probably got to be one of your one or two top dogs, I would assume. Antwerp loses a ton.
Yeah.
So Antwerp's pretty much, we're going to throw everything in the hat this year, and we got to go for it because next year is probably going to be a rebuilding year for Coach Hale and the Archers, but the Rams really don't lose that much, honestly.
Yeah, they're
As a linebackers, but
crew, really.
Yeah, Dom will be back.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. They've got some. Tinora has some good underclassmen coming up. So Devin Llewellyn and
Josh Lieb,
and
Abram Jimenez.
Yeah,
I
bunch
mean, we go on and on and on.
bunch of good kids coming up. They, I don't know. Honestly, I give it. It depends. I'm going to give Coach Rake some credit here. If he can get those kids to buy in, they very well could be a top 2 team next year.
Absolutely.
But the kids got to buy in. They got to buy in. They got to buy in the off season. Not wait until next year. They got to buy in the off season. Get in the gym.
Yep.
Get
in the weight room. Yep.
And they could definitely. I mean, they have the potential. Like we talked. They have an explosive offense, and they're young enough that if those kids buy in and get in the weight room and get themselves stronger, get prepared, it's possible.
I know we're talking about Fairview being in the top 2. I think a team that I really like being in the top 2 is Paulding.
Yeah.
Paulding because I believe they bring back 4. They bring back Jack Woods. They bring back Roanhouse, their good wide receiver. I believe they bring back their Hunt, their quarterback, too. Paulding's looking to be reloaded next year. So I would give Paulding next year, I think, and because they've already made some noise this year. Yep. I think Fairview's 2 years removed from that. I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, Fife's a senior.
Fife's a senior, but
Colton Hunt's just a sophomore.
Yeah. So, and he's already got experience at quarterback this season. But like I said, Blake 4, he's been not.
Yeah, Jack Woods is just a junior.
Yeah, but 4.
Kobe 4.
Kobe 4, yeah.
I said the same thing.
Blake 4 is a former Tinora running back. So, no, Kobe 4, he's already one of the top running backs in the league, and he'll be back next year as well. So,
This kind of leads us right into the next hot take. We're talking about the GMC being wide open next year.
Yep.
It really is. It can really be anybody's ball game at any time.
It is.
It's Antwerp's. They're definitely, like Keith just mentioned, they're not going to be the top dog. Paulding, like you said, Logan, probably runs in everybody's eyes. Probably jumps kind of the front runner with the talent they're bringing back. Maybe Wayne Trace. I'm not sure what they're bringing back. With Stoller, I'm not sure.
I think Stoller graduates, so you're without your starting quarterback. Wenslick graduates.
Yeah, so they might be. I'm not sure where they'll stand. So you're looking at a couple teams like that, but like you said, I think Tinora definitely is in that mix. Edgerton, probably they're a couple years removed yet. Not sure about Hicksville, what they look like, but.
Yeah, and I think the big question is, too, you lose all these kids to graduation, but how well can you replace them? So who do they have coming up that's going to be maybe a couple freshmen that they can get on the playing field that are going to make some difference? It's just like Fairview's doing this year. Yeah. The good thing about playing freshman and sophomore is you're developing them for years to come, too.
Right.
So that's how you build a program from ground up. And I think Coach Rake realizes that at Fairview, and he wants to get those kids experience. So by the time they're juniors and seniors, they're primed to have big seasons, but also take the younger underclassmen under their wing and show them, this is how we do things. This is a winning culture. This is how we do this and this and all the little things that add up. So,
which is what Coach Dominic said during our coaches show way back, which doesn't seem that long ago, but it does. He's like, those younger kids, just to get them experience on Friday night, you throw them out there on special teams. So when they do become sophomores and juniors ready to step into a starting role, they're not starstruck like, oh, I'm standing out here on Friday night on the island all by myself. So if you do throw them in on special teams at a young age, they're more adapt to just plug and play as a sophomore, junior, senior.
Yeah, and I have seen Tinora doing that. We have a lot of younger kids on special teams, kickoff returns.
Yeah, I have to agree with that hot take. I do. I truly think it's wide open. Yep. I don't know that there's one. I know we talked about some front runners, but it's anyone's ball game next season.
Yeah, you look at that hot take last year, and you'd be like, Antwerp's the front runner.
Oh, 100%.
No doubt about it. And look at this; it's still wide open.
Yeah, that's true. Three teams tied at the top of the GMC right now: Ayersville, Tinora, Antwerp. So I don't think anyone really. I think teams could have, or people would have probably guessed that those three would have been at the top, but for them to be tied, I don't think anyone would have really guessed that this late in the season.
Right.
Yeah. All right, next one, another Green Meadows Conference one. Liberty Center, Archbold, Patrick Henry, and Wauseon would go undefeated in the GMC. I'm just going to say, well, if all of those teams were in the GMC, they'd have to play each other. So just looking at that now for what it's worth, but I understand where they're coming from. Liberty Center, 100%. Archbold, if we're just talking about these teams beating teams currently in the GMC, that's I guess that's how I'm taking it.
Yeah.
Archbold, I think, does. Liberty Center, I think, does. Patrick Henry with Nash Meyer, I think, does.
Yep.
Wauseon, again, I think they're the ones that are iffy because we see, they beat up and they win the games that they're supposed to win. But the big ones, they just, like he says, they can't get over that hill on the roller coaster.
I think Tinora actually has won the last 2 games against Wauseon.
Yeah, and Tinora, when Tinora played that series with Wauseon, I believe, they took last year's, right?
Yeah. I think the year before at Wauseon, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, we already seen, that's a sample right there, but I think Antwerp, Tinora, and Ayersville, I think they would give PH a run for their money. Obviously, Tenora's played 2 of them, and Tenora's tied for first in the GMC, so we kind of know that. So, what are you guys thinking?
And guys, step back to week 1. Tinora was beating Liberty Center.
That's true too.
Yeah. Tinora was beating Liberty Center. Had they not thrown that interception, that game may have gone a different direction because Liberty Center was not playing well.
No,
and you look back and you think Liberty Center could be sitting at 7-1. And their loss could have been to Tinora because Tinora was winning that game.
Yep.
Let me ask you this. Would it make a difference if Liberty Center played Tinora now? What would you think that outcome?
No.
Oh, I don't.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No,
So, I think
Liberty Center playing now. That's what I'm saying. Liberty Center playing now, but Liberty Center week 1, Tinora was winning that game. So, to say, they would go undefeated, they might go undefeated now, but week 1, they may have ended up with a loss had things gone differently for Tinora that day, but once Tinora threw the interception, we were all there, witnessed it. The wheels just fell off the wagon quick, but
Very quick.
I don't know if they all go undefeated. I think Liberty Center, Archbold have a good shot of going undefeated. PH and Wauseon, 50-50.
50-50, I agree.
Yeah, I'm with you on PH and Wauseon. I mean, like you said, Keith, Wauseon and Tinora have played a couple of times, 2 years, and Wauseon lost both of those.
Yeah.
So that right there kind of solves that hot take for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. At the end of the day, I think Liberty Center, Archbold, they take care of business if they were in the Green Meadows Conference. PH, I think I give them 75% chance, maybe 60% chance of going undefeated. Wauseon, I give maybe 30%, 40%, because I think Antwerp, Tinora, Ayersville, even some of the other teams, Wayne Trace and even Paulding, like those aren't bad teams, and you catch them on the wrong day or right day, they could probably take a PH or Wauseon if you catch them. So.
Yeah, 2021, Tinora beat Wauseon 23-13.
Yeah.
And last year was at Tinora. And
I know they won that game. I just don't know what the score was.
27-14.
Sure. So, there you go. That's just one example. But, that's a good question. So,
Very good.
We always kind of talk. Those are 2 conferences that are very close. And actually, both conferences tend to play each other's teams quite a bit.
Yep.
So,
Non-conference-wise, yep.
All right, let's look at the next one. Patrick Henry is going to get taken to the woodshed again this week. So if you guys remember a couple of weeks ago, someone said that Liberty Center was going to take Patrick Henry out behind the woodshed, and this week someone's saying that against Archbold.
And Liberty Center did take PH out behind the
Yeah,
woodshed.
they did. Yeah,
Show
they
them the
did.
business.
I think this is going to be a playoff atmosphere game, really. This is probably is a preview for your opening week playoff dress rehearsal, we'll call it. And I really think Patrick Henry is very competitive in this game. Whether or not they win, Archbold probably will win, but Coach I will have the boys ready. And this will be your 3rd week without Nash. So I think Patrick Henry will perform a lot better than he did against Liberty Center when they just got destroyed.
This game is going to tell a lot about what team Patrick Henry is going to be in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Because this is the first, true quality team. Obviously, I know Liberty Center's obviously everyone that Liberty Center's played, they've blown out of, but another quality team. But how is Patrick Henry going to respond? They're probably going to have to run the ball more. We know that, and Houston Miranda is going to have a lot on his shoulders, but they're going to have to throw the ball. That whole offense is designed to throw the ball. And I know they've been playing with a little bit more 11 personnel, having a tight end on the ball, incorporating the run game a little bit more. But at the end of the day, we've seen it too. You got to throw the ball at least a little bit, especially once you play quality teams and deep playoff runs. You got to be multiple with your offense.
I think if Coach I and PH can control obviously the line of scrimmage is a big question, but if they can control the ball and keep Archbold's offense off the field, I think they can play with Archbold in this game.
Well,
whether or not they can win, that's a whole other question. But the key is to keep Patrick Henry's defense off the field.
Yeah, and that's something that's plausible that Patrick Henry can do. We've seen them play games throughout the year where they've dominated the time of possession time and time again. And, when you're without that high-powered scoring offense, which I'm not saying PH can't go out there and score, but, like we said, Nash Meyer would go out there and he'd throw for 3-4 passing touchdowns, 300-plus yards. They just don't have that factor anymore. So, if they control – try to control the line of scrimmage, but time of possession, I think that's where they're really going to have things play in their favor if they can do that.
Yeah, I just don't. I'm sitting here kind of going back and forth between their schedules and trying to match up key, opponents.
Archbold's defense is pretty good. They really don't allow a lot of points.
Yeah,
probably, I would say, average maybe 10 points allowed.
Well, that's
perhaps.
They gave up 14 to Wauseon and 14 to Genoa. Obviously, they gave up 42 to Liberty Center, but other than that,
you take out the outlier of Liberty Center, the most points they've given up in a game is 14. I mean, that's pretty. All the other games, 14 Genoa, they gave up 0 to St. Henry.
Yeah, you look at PH, they gave up 42 to Bryan, they gave up 28 to Columbus Grove.
I just think Patrick Henry's defense is more vulnerable, I guess. I think that's been a kind of a question throughout the season.
Yeah, key is to just keep the defense off the field if you can just control the ball.
Yeah, no, I think that game's going to be interesting, and, we'll see what kind of team Patrick Henry rolls out, and I think that will be a telltale for how they do, and if they make a deep playoff run or not. So,
to say they get taken by the woodshed, I'm going to say no. I'm going to go no. I don't think they get taken behind the woodshed.
Yeah, I don't know that they take them out behind the woodshed, but I think the game's competitive, but I'll reveal my pick later. So
what was
whenever I get Max Prep,
Yeah.
I always
Max
brings
Prep's
up
always
a ad in the
puts ads in
background.
All right, and we got the last hot take here, and this will be a good one. All right, all the local schools, well, a lot of the local schools now have turf, but some still have grass. Out of all those local schools, which field/stadium is the best? Who wants to start this one?
I mean, when you look around, Liberty Center got their new field, and their facility is awesome with the fence around it. They redid their whole visitor side. We talked about Bryan's facility earlier. Defiance, we were at Defiance's down the field in that game. They have turf. I was just at Fairview today, and they still have grass, but it's immaculate. It's well cut, very well painted. They got the nice robotic painter there. Just a lot of different fields there that are just around the area.
I think this is a hard question. I think because you got to break it down into categories because turf, I don't know if you can compare that to grass, turf and grass,
right?
And then like just stadium game day atmosphere. Like if you're looking at stadium game day atmosphere, including everything, I think Liberty Center hands down. I think they're my number one. Mine personally, I think Bryan is there too. I've never been to an actual game at Bryan, but I've seen pictures of the facilities, things like that. They're up there as well. But if you're looking at nice groomed grass fields, which I love to play on a nice grass field, we talked Fairview's got to be up there. We saw them. That grass field is so green and so luscious. It just looks like you could go lay down there and do snow angels in the grass. I don't know. It looks so comfortable.
It's definitely nice. Like I said, I was there tonight, and it's nice dark green and very well groomed. But when it comes down to the atmosphere, Defiance had a nice atmosphere when we were there with all the food trucks in there, and there's a big atmosphere and people kind of all roaming around. And I don't know. What do you guys think?
Atmosphere wise, we kind of talked about it earlier. I like Edgerton Stadium as far as field goes. I like a good grass field. I really, a nice soft grass, well trimmed. So Fairview's field be a really good contender for me. Now, as far as just stadiums and everything, atmosphere wise, Liberty Center's got a fantastic setup over there. Now, I like Edgerton just because it's a unique place where you're right on top of each other and you can hear the fans yelling down the back of your neck and get you amped up a little bit. But I think my all-time best stadium to play in for the atmosphere, I got to agree with you, Logan. Liberty Center's got such a nice place over there.
I do want to make a quick point, though. I think there should be some kind of rule for football. Football fields should not have tracks around them because
Oh no, I agree with that.
because
100%.
because you look at Edgerton, Delta's another one. When you can sit right on top of the field, that's just you feel more connected as a fan. I think as a player, you feel the energy from the fans, and you just feed off that. I think there should be a rule in high school football: no tracks allowed around footbll fields.
Liberty Center's like that now. If you're on the visiting side,
Yeah.
it's not very far. It's right there. Because when we were over there for the junior high, you start yelling at some of the kids, and you're kind of like, oh, parents are right behind me.
Yeah.
And the junior high game is way different than a high school game because there's not much noise going on.
Yeah, and I think that's what I like about all those facilities. I mean, you talk about fields and facilities. Edgerton's like that. Liberty Center, they don't have a track around their field. Delta, when I remember playing there, you sit right on top of the field as well. So, veto any tracks around football. I sorry for you track people out there, but you go there to watch football for the most part, and I like to sit right on top of the field. So
that's good point, Logan. I like that.
Yeah.
Keith,
God, boy, grass fields. We'll break it down like you guys did. Grass fields. Wauseon has a fantastic
that's true
field.
too. Yes,
I mean, it's green. It's set up as perfect. Fairview, another good one.
and I don't think Wauseon doesn't have a track either.
I
around
don't
it,
believe they do.
I don't think they have a track
No,
around their
I
football
think-
field. So
I don't believe so. Antwerp grass is good Lord. They cut their grass like as high as the mower will cut. I think, but it looked great. But a little bit out of our area, we don't really cover them. But when we went to Elmwood last year twice, that
geez.
field
Yes.
Forgot
is
about that place.
amazing. I don't know. Well, we kind of do because we heard off camera,
Yeah.
but that gentleman over at Elmwood, whoever he is, took such pride talking about that field to us during the scrimmage game, and it showed because that thing is amazing. So whoever that fellow is, kudos, because it is greener than this cup here.
Talking about the fertilizer, talking
Oh,
about striping,
boy.
and talking about
he was the head groundskeeper for Elmwood, and he was telling us all about this. Oh yeah, right before X amount of days, you got to hit it with 25 whatever nitrogen, and he
Slinging
said
out these
it will
numbers.
green it right up. And I'm like, oh man, I need to start taking notes because we
12,
need to do this back at
12,
Tinora.
10, 10, 10, and all this
He's
stuff.
talking about all his different fertilizers and things like that. I'm like, man, this dude really knows what he's talking about, and it showed, like you said too.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing too.
Yep.
I know, obviously, it's nice to have nice facilities, but I think that shows a lot of you taking pride in your program, taking pride in your school. When people come to those, whether you like it or not, they're going to have some kind of predetermined notion of your school district, your field, your program, based on your facilities too. If you go to a place and they have a sloppy field, they have bleachers falling apart, what are people going to think? They're going to think, oh man, why would we want to go there?
Right.
Like that's a terrible school district. They don't take care of it. So I think that's a big thing too.
Yeah. But I'm with AJ and you guys as far as overall game day atmosphere, the whole thing. Liberty Center probably does it top notch. But as AJ said, and I've said a million times, my favorite place to go is Edgerton.
Yep.
You're literally breathing on the back of AJ while he's on the sidelines ready to run in on defense. When you when you walk to the concessions around the corner there, you literally can walk out and slap him on the back of the helmet. It's just something about Edgerton. Down in that bowl, you can hear everything, see everything, reach out, touch a player if you want.
Guys, there's one that we forgot.
What's that?
That does not have a track around. That's Hicksville.
Man, that's
Yeah,
true.
Hicksville
You're right on top of them there too.
Yep.
And that's when your kicker, if you have a good enough kicker, they can kick it over the concession
Concession
stand.
stand
Yeah, they
roof,
got a big
which-
enough leg.
Yeah,
So
that's another nice place to play. They do a nice job
They do.
taking care of their field as well. So there's a lot of them around there. It's just kind of a
always guessing the over or under how many trains are going to go by during a baseball or football game too. And but I'm just thinking of other facilities. One facility I'm gonna say, going as like media or just watching a game, Donnell Stadium in Findlay.
Yeah. Yes.
Tony, myself, and my dad were able to go last year. And that press box is probably the nicest press box I've ever been in. It's a double decker. They had a bathroom. We were upstairs. And it was nice. We were all sprawled out. That is a very nice facility. I played there when I played at the University of Findlay too. It's a nice field, a big stadium too. I believe it holds like 8,000. And talking about tracks, the track actually runs in front of the home stands, and it runs behind the away stands.
That's what I was going to bring up.
What?
To bring it closer, it does. It runs behind.
If we go there this year, you'll have to look. The track literally runs in front of the home stands, and it encircles the away stands inside of it. The track goes behind. Yeah,
Wow.
check it out.
We were there.
I don't remember that. Yeah,
We were over there when Logan played.
Yeah,
It goes behind us.
Yeah.
The only
we watched Michigan State lose to Ohio State over there.
Yeah, the only thing,
On a field goal.
the only thing that I would say about that one is the parking. There's just like the parking. It's literally like in a subdivision.
Yeah, it is.
like
There is an open lot to the south side of the stadium because that's where they'd have all the parking for the college games that we'd play there. The only thing I don't like about that field is if you look in the, what would it be, north end zone, the northwest end zone, the corner of it actually dips down. It's on a slope.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Because if you're throwing a fade in the end zone, I could never understand that for player safety, but why they designed it like that, I don't know. There had to be some kind of reason. But the corner of the end zone, you're running down a hill.
Yeah, it drops down to the track.
Yep, it drops down to the track, and then the bell is right there.
Yeah.
And I could never understand that. So,
Don't run a fade to that corner because you'd be like 7 yards shorter.
yeah, really. So there was numerous times in college that guys would run fades, they'd throw it up there, and I'm surprised they didn't get hurt more than they did. So, but that's a nice facility to watch some playoff games at too. So
That's a very good hot take. I like that. We could talk about this stuff all day.
yeah. So, all right. Well, that concludes our hot takes again. Usually I submit those Sunday evening. So send those in and we'll talk about them come the podcast time. So
Please do.
yeah, a lot of good ones this week. All right. Let's move on to the next segment. Matthew's breakout players for week 9. Matthew's offensive breakout player of the week is Joe Burt, running back from North Central. Reasoning is Van Loo has really struggled on defense so far this year, as the lowest amount of points they've given up is 28. So I expect a big week from Burt as he leads North Central to an 8-1 record. My defensive player of the week for Matthew is Joey Geisinger, linebacker from Tinora. Reasoning is Edgerton has really struggled to put up a lot of points against quality opponents this season, as they've combined for 13 against Wayne Trace and Ayersville. So I expect a big week out of Geisinger. So again, we call him Matthew's Mr. Nostradamus of the 21st century. He's always picking kids that have really good performances. So keep an eye out for those two, as they'll probably have a big week. So again, we thank Matthew for his help for us. So, all right, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with game predictions and closing thoughts. Northwest Ohio Basketball hosts premier basketball tournaments for boys in grades 3 to 8 in the area. Upcoming tournaments are right around the corner. Give them a call today at 419-283-5296 or check out their website at nwoball.com. The Thunderdome is your local indoor softball and baseball facility offering private lessons, turf infield, batting cages, and pitching machine rentals, even offering a golf simulator. Located in Archbold, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-906-3643. Nicely Rentals and Storage is your go-to venue for graduation parties, birthdays, weddings, and more. Also offering vehicle storage, table and chair rentals, and U-Haul equipment. Located in Ayersville, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-439-6177. Trueland Equipment and Salesman Lauren Brown are your go-to for John Deere equipment in Archbold, Ohio. Mowers, compact tractors, skid loaders, and more. Your sales expert on commercial turf and CCE sales. Give Lauren a call today at 419-445-1565. We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we are looking at Week 9 game predictions. So a lot of these games have a lot of points on the line, and this could be make or break for a lot of teams this week. All right, so we're going to go ahead. We'll roll through. We'll announce our picks, and we'll go from there. So we're looking at the first game. Patrick Henry, 7-1 at Archbold, 7-1. This one could be interesting, but obviously we know Patrick Henry is playing without quarterback Nash Meyer. Archbold, they're firing on all cylinders. I mean, you really take out the Liberty Center game, and they've been blowing out everyone. I think Archbold takes care of business. I think they get this win. But I think Patrick Henry is competitive. I like what I saw out of him against Delta. I think they're going to go out there, they're going to compete, and I think, like I said earlier, this will be a kind of small sample size to see how they're going to do in the playoffs, and especially in big games. So, like Keith said, I think this should be a good atmosphere, a lot of people there, but I'm taking Archbold.
This is one of those games we talked about ball control and whatnot. If it's going to be a rainy Friday night, I think it probably benefits Patrick Henry more than Archbold, because Patrick Henry probably going into the mindset of, we got to run the ball anyways, whereas Coach Dominic and Archbold, they're probably 50-50 pass run. A rainy Friday night could make things very interesting. Taking the streaks.
Yeah, I like what Archbold's done this year. They're a pretty powerful team. I'm going to go with the Blue Streaks.
Yeah, you guys are saying it. I like PH. I think PH, I honestly almost picked PH in this. I just think Archbold, their defense is going to hold PH in check. So I'm going Archbold.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Archbold, so Archbold across the board from everyone. Next game, 5-3 Bryan at 5-3 Wauseon, and this is going to be our NWO Sports Game of the Week. You really look at it on paper, two evenly matched teams. They both have their excellent skill players. You know, you look at Tyson Rodriguez, you look at Trey Parsons from Wauseon, you look at Jace Kepler, Sam Harold from Bryan. Two very explosive offenses, but I think at the end of the day, which defense is going to hold up?
Yeah.
The other thing here is we talked about it earlier. Wauseon has struggled with teams that have winning records and to get the job done. For that reason, I think Bryan takes this game. But I hope Wauseon proves me wrong and they get over that hump that we keep talking about. So I'm going Bryan.
Yeah, Bryan's rebounded nicely, have 2 straight wins. And as we said, the last 2 or 3 weeks, Wauseon just cannot get a quality win, per se. Be a big win for Wauseon. I'm taking the Golden Bears of Bryan.
Bryan.
I believe the weather's going to play a factor in this one when it comes to Wauseon being able to throw the ball, and I think Bryan's going to just pound the rock. So Bryan for me.
Bryce had Wauseon, and Matthew had Bryan. So Bryce was the only one that went against the grain with Wauseon. Next game, Delta 3-5 at Liberty Center 8-0. I think this is just another slaughterhouse game from Liberty Center. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I think Delta, they're 3-5. They still got some things to work on. But when you're facing the monster of Liberty Center, who we keep saying is a state title contender, it's going to be tough to win. And to win at Liberty Center, we just talked about their facilities and the atmosphere. That is an atmosphere like no other in Northwest Ohio. So I'm taking Liberty Center.
Yeah, time for Coach Moeller just to keep the boys focused and have some sort of goal here at the end of this game. LC.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Liberty Center here. I think it's going to be like 21-0 in the first quarter.
I'm going with Tigers.
Bryce and Matthew both had Liberty Center, so Liberty Center from all of us. Next game, Evergreen 2-6 at Swanton 0-8. This game may look competitive from the outside looking in, but I think Evergreen's going to come out and they're going to take care of business. I think they're going to win by a fairly big margin. I really like what the Vikings are doing, and they've got some good athletes. I still think Swanton's still a couple years out. But I'm going the Vikings.
Yep, Evergreen. Building a nice program, actually, at Evergreen.
Vikings for me.
I took Evergreen, but I'm sitting there thinking, is this the week that Swanton takes number 1? Or are they just going to go over the whole year? Evergreen for me.
Bryce and Matthew both had Evergreen, so Evergreen from all of us. Next game, Antwerp 7-1 at Paulding 5-3. I think it's going to help Paulding that this game is at Paulding. We saw a really tough performance out of Paulding last week. Both teams actually are coming off losses, but I think Antwerp's going to respond. I think they're going to be critical of themselves because they have a good coaching staff. They have really good athletes. I think they're going to learn from their mistakes last week. I think the only way Paulding stays in this game is if they run the rock, and that's what Ayersville did. That's what Tinora did. That's what all these teams did that have either A, nearly came to beating Antwerp, or B, Antwerp. Yep. And I think that's the only way that Paulding has a chance. Now, on the flip side, I think Antwerp corrects that mistake, and they learn how to truly stop run offenses and stop the run game. So I'm going the Archers.
I think it's similar to last week when Paulding came to Tinora. Tinora had a point to prove. I think Antwerp, as Logan said, week to set things, set your goals, get everything back in order. I think Antwerp just comes out and dominates.
Yeah, I think the weather will also play a big part against Paulding. Saw how they struggled last week, and I don't see that changing. I think Antwerp's going to come out with vengeance.
You saying that, AJ, the weather could play a factor, and maybe it played a factor against Antwerp this past week. So does it play another factor? I don't know. I just think Antwerp's going to take care of business.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Antwerp from all of us. Next game, Wayne Trace 4-4 at Ayersville 6-2. Ayersville's riding sky high right now. They came off that big win last week against Antwerp. They're sitting tied for first in the GMC right now. Wayne Trace, on the other hand, last year they won this matchup.
Yep.
This game's at Ayersville. I think this game's going to be close. I really do. I think Ayersville, they played phenomenal last week, but I think Wayne Trace, I think they're going to take them down to the wire. At the end of the day, I think the Pilots come up in the win column.
Yeah, it would be no good for for Ayersville to be sky high last week and beat Antwerp, but then be flat and lose to Wayne Trace this week. I think Coach Mickey has them ready, and they win this handily.
Yeah, I've got the Pilots winning.
Yeah, I picked Ayersville, but I tell you, I'm with you, Logan. Wayne Trace, this could be a game that Ayersville slips on.
Yeah,
that's what I'm sitting here thinking. Man, do I want to take Wayne Trace coming off that big high win and then stumble and fall on your face the very next week?
Right.
You see it happen all the time, but I'll stick with Ayersville. They're at home.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Ayersville from all of us. Next game, Tinora 5-3 at Edgerton 2-6 will be at this game. I really like the way Tinora took care of business last week. It was nice to see a complete performance, and I know obviously the weather was a factor, but for Tinora to put all facets of the game, offense, defense, special teams, they played a really nice game, put it together. I foresee them doing that again this week. In which they need to prepare for upcoming playoffs. So I'm going to Tinora.
Taking the Rams.
Rams for sure.
Tinora.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Tinora, so Tinora from all of us. Next game, Hicksville 1-7 at Fairview 1-7. I think Fairview takes this game handedly. They played Wayne Trace. Actually, they were beating Wayne Trace in the fourth quarter last week. Fairview has done a really nice job this year. They're improved. I think they win this one. I would say probably more than 21 points. 21 points or more. I'm going Apaches.
Yep, Apaches.
Fairview for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Fairview as well. Next game, Eden 6-2 at Elmwood 2-6. This is kind of an intriguing matchup. I know Elmwood's kind of been down this year, but I believe they beat Tinora in the scrimmage.
Yeah, they did.
But Elmwood's had a couple of bad losses. I don't know. I think this will be a good test for Eden to see where they sit. I know Elmwood's 2-6, but I think they're better than a 2-6. They play a lot of tough teams as well. So, but at the end of the day, I'm going to go Eden.
Yeah, you said it all over. I think this is closer than what it should be. Bombers on top, though.
Going with the Bombers.
Eden for me.
And Bryce and Matthew had Eden. And just real quick, that's got to be a long drive.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
I just say Elmwood from Defiance is about an hour drive,
close.
or close to an hour.
Yeah,
Eden is close towards the Indiana border. That's got to be probably hour 45 drive, maybe one way.
Yeah, hour and a half.
Close. Hour and a half at least.
I would probably hour 45 is. You're probably right.
So yeah, that's a long drive. Next game, Hilltop 1-7 at Northwood 2-6. I think I'm going to take Northwood. They played Montpelier pretty tough, but I'm going Northwood.
Northwood for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Northwood. Next game, Montpelier 6-2 at Ottawa Hills 7-1. We talked about this.
Yep.
If Montpelier wants in for sure to the playoffs, they have to win this. It's do or die. Don't leave it up to luck, but Ottawa Hills is a good team. They're 7-1. They're 7-1 for a reason. I hate to say it, but I'm going to go Ottawa Hills. I think they pull off this win against the Locos.
Yeah, this is a playoff week for Montpelier. Coach Robinson will have the boys ready. I'm pulling for them, but on the paper, I'm taking Ottawa Hills.
Ottawa Hills.
I'm pulling for the Locos, and I'm picking them. I think Coach Robinson's got them ready to go, and like you said, they're fighting for the playoff life. So, I think they're going to go in there and they're going to take one away from Ottawa Hills.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Ottawa Hills, so Tony was the only one going against Green. Next game, North Central 7-1 at Van Loo 1-6. I think this one's a no-brainer. I think North Central goes and they take care of business. They have all year, and especially against a team like Van Loo, I think North Central gets it done.
Yes, Coach Thompson will have the boys ready. Taking North Central.
North Central.
Eagles for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had North Central. Next game, Defiance 6-2 at Salina 7-1. Another intriguing matchup. You know, Salina 7-1. I believe their only loss came to Versailles, which again, that's a MAC school, very good. Yeah. Salina, they've got a pretty good defense as well. I think Defiance has enough talent. I think they have enough to beat Salina. The question is, if they do get up on Salina, can they hold on to it in the second half? Yep. That I don't know. You know, we've seen glimpses of Defiance. Again, Defiance has been kind of iffy here and there, like games against Van Wert. I think they should have won that game against Van Wert, some other games. But I think I'm going to go Salina.
Yeah, this was a tough one. I left it blank for quite a while. Would I be surprised if Defiance won? Absolutely not.
Oh,
but,
no.
Taking Salina.
I'm going to be pulling for the Bulldogs here. I'm going to go with Defiance.
I kind of test this now. I'm with you, Logan. If the Bulldogs pull this off, I mean, it'd be an upset. And boy, just the way they've kind of finished games here lately, I got to go with Salina.
Bryce had Defiance and Matthew had Salina, so we're split on that game. Next one, Shawnee 0-8 at Ottawa Glandorf 0-8. So some team is going to get their first win of the season here. That team is going to be Ottawa Glandorf because I think Ottawa Glandorf, they've played teams really tough. They've been in a lot of teams against some of the top teams in the WBL. So I think OG gets it done. I think they get their first win of the year.
Titans
for me.
OG.
And Bryce and Matthew both had OG as well. Next game, Kenton 2-6 at Van Wert 5-3. I don't know, but if I'll let you guys announce your picks, but this may not look good for Van Wert. I will say last week all of us picked Van Wert and they won, so maybe we broke that curse.
The monkey off our back.
Yeah, that's right.
They're back.
That's right.
Really ours.
So I'm going the Cougars. I'll let you guys announce your picks.
Taking Van Wert.
Van Wert.
And Van Wert from Bryce and Matthew. So we'll see which.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
That's right. So we'll see how that turns out. Next game, Napoleon 4-4 at Bowling Green 5-3. I really like the way Napoleon's playing right now. They got a lot of fire underneath them. They've been tested. You know, they were battle tested last week, going into 3 overtimes. I'm going Napoleon.
Yeah, Coach Swery has the Cats playing as good as anybody in our area. Taking Napoleon.
Going with Napoleon.
I'm going BG, guys.
What's the reasoning?
Well, I think people have figured out how to shut down Rubenstein, and I think Bowling Green's going to be able to find a way to keep the Cats out of the end zone.
All right. And Bryce and Matthew both had Bowling Green, so we are split right down the middle on that one. Next game, Columbus Grove 6-2 at Ada 3-5. Columbus Grove is riding sky high. They're playing the best football of the season to this point. I think Columbus Grove rolls into Ada. They take care of business, and they go home. I'm going Columbus Grove.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely Columbus Grove.
Yep.
And
Columbus Grove.
Bryce and Matthew both had Columbus Grove as well. A couple 8-man games here on the slate. Striker 1-6 at Danbury 1-5. Striker's just been struggling this year. They've got that one win. I'm going to have to go Danbury with them being at home as well.
I just took Danbury because I always take Striker and they keep losing. So if I take Danbury, maybe Striker will win.
I'm going with Danbury just because they're at home. That's really the reason I went with them.
I kind of kicked this around for about half a second, and I'm just like, you know what? Everybody else picked Danbury, so am I.
Don't want to have that be the game.
No, I don't want that game to be the decider.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Danbury. Last game here, Chalker 1-1 at Holgate 6-1. And okay, I got to read this about Chalker. Matthew actually updated me on this because I had no idea about this team.
Yeah, this is bizarre.
So Chalker, they've played one 8-man game, and they blew out Sebring McKinley and only lost to a quality 11-man team by 4. And they've played against 6 JV teams. So they've played JV teams. I'm not sure if that means they played an 11-man and they played one 8-man game. So they're playing like a hybrid schedule. Which
Bishop Sycamore.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't know that was possible. So I don't know. Holgate's coming off a loss, but I really don't know much about Chalker. And, this game could be interesting considering this Chalker only played one 8-man game before. So, strategy's a little bit different. Field dimensions are a little bit different, but I'm going Holgate.
Taking Holgate.
Yeah, I'm taking Holgate as well.
I just changed my pick. I was going to go back to. I had Holgate, went to Chalker. I'm going to go back to Holgate. I think Holgate's going to be able to take care of business. I don't know, though. The weather, again, it's going to be crappy Friday night. Hopefully Holgate can pull us off.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Holgate. So that concludes our Week 9 game predictions. Closing thoughts, guys.
For me, and probably all of us here, number one, Nash Meyer I think he has a surgery this week. Logan.
So. Yeah,
so
up.
Best wishes to Nash and his family for a speedy recovery for Nash, and hopefully he can be ready for spring sports. So we all here wish the best for you out there for your recovery. Second, thank to all the area ADs from around the area for all the hard work that you do. Doesn't go unnoticed, especially Jake from Tinora done a fantastic job so far, just kicking butt. But thanks to all the area ADs for all your hard work.
Yeah, definitely helped. Thank you for keeping us dry and keeping us inside and making us somewhat comfortable. But yeah, this week's going to be another weather game, so we'll kind of see how this plays out this weekend. But I'm looking forward to it. And as the season winds down here, games are, all these games have playoff implications in them. It's where you end up in the playoffs. It's not necessarily whether you're in or out. Right. Some teams have clinched, but depends on where you're at, and who you match up again. Maybe not necessarily the first round, but maybe in the second round, who you match up against.
Yeah, and we keep getting messages and notifications coming in from people in the community thanking us for what we do and the shout outs we give, and again, it continues to motivate us to keep doing this. It's a fantastic feeling seeing those things pop up, especially when Logan gets something he shares with the rest of us. It's a fantastic feeling. So if you guys feel that we've done something to help benefit, your kid or your team, feel free to share that with us, because that's why we do what we do.
Yep.
And, my closing thought is best time of the year is coming up, and that's playoff football for high school. And with that being said, I'll announce for next week. Next week's going to be a big podcast, so we're having a lot going on. So we're having our man, Mr. Michael Hearn. He's going to come up. He's going to join us live next week as long as everything goes. So he's always a great personality to have
absolutely.
on. So pumped to have Michael on. 2, we should have Mr. Drew Pastor of our favorite website, Drew Pastor's Fantastic 50. He should be calling in on phone call, discussing about his whole playoff system, his analytics. And that
unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. I don't know how he does it all because of all the stats and everything and, the system that he has. So I'm really curious to pick his brain and to see how he came up with this. So I'm really excited for that as well. And, next week, our whole podcast will be based on playoff implications, predictions, where teams line up. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. It's going to be one you don't want to miss. So be sure to tune in because it's going to be a lot of fun. So
absolutely.
Other than that, I think we're good to go. Yeah. So we would like to thank all of our sponsors, 3Chord, BSN Sports and Jim Garris, Bat and Stevens Body Shop, Tinora Rams Live, Jimenez Basketball Academy, Fairchild Family Chiropractic, NWO Basketball, The Drop Zone Pizzeria, Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty, Optimal Performance Fitness, Nicely Storage and Rentals, The Thunderdome, and Truland Equipment, and Lauren Brown. We'd also like to give a special thanks to Jeff Batt for allowing us to use his amazing new facility here at Bat and Stevens Body Shop for today's podcast. Stay tuned for the next NWO Sports Podcast in the near future, and thanks for watching.